Hello everybody. Welcome to the stream. Today we are recording a new episode of The Private Citizen. Yes, I'm just waiting for Mike to get online. We will have a discussion about the post-election analysis, basically the thing we promised the last time he was on. I'm just going to record and stream that, and then I will go offline and later record the rest of the podcast around that, put it together, put the podcast out. Excuse me. I'm not doing that live on stream because there's just a lot going on right now. I got a lot of other stuff to do in between, and I need to really, work hard today. There's a lot going on. I was just watching the voting in the Bundestag on the new pandemic law that I talked about on the last episode, and that was pretty wild. And I'm in a bit of I'm in a sarcastic mood now because, of course, I mean, we have a grand coalition, so there really is no. I mean, it's clear how the vote is going. I mean, they're definitely passing law, but it's just the speeches. It's all very, very annoying. I don't watch these parliamentary TV things. It's kind of like our version of C-SPAN. I don't really watch that because whenever I do, I just get disillusioned with the democratic process, and that's not a thing that should happen often. It's not good for me if that happens to me. So I want to keep that at a minimum if possible. So we're gonna today on the podcast, we're gonna of course talk about the U.S. election. I'm gonna do more stuff on the pandemic. Oh, this is Mike calling. Okay, I'll put you on a standby. I'll be back as soon as possible. Give me a second. Okay, everybody, I'm back here. I've got Mike on the line. Say hello, Mike.
How's it going, everyone?
That you should be audible on the stream now. Looks good.
Perfect.
My God, it's busy today. I can tell you. It's. I was just explaining. I was watching the voting in the Bundestag on the lockdown law, and I don't do that often.
And how is it going?
Well, it's a grand coalition, so they're passing it. There's no really vote. They just had had an hour of speeches, and whenever I watch something, I watch something like this, it's just I lose all faith in democracy.
I can just see you sitting there, slamming the table.
No, I was just basically shouting back at the government people who were, or the members of the coalition who were talking about their law. It was just like insane, and it's just really bad. Like the you watch that, and then like the guy from the AfD who is an absolute idiot, and obviously they're our basically AfD is our what's the party in the UK again? No, I forgot.
Like the Conservatives, the Labour, or
no, the UKIP, basically UKIP.
Oh, UKIP. Oh, jeez.
Does Ireland have something comparable?
There's some small.
Some people would call them alt-right, basically.
Yeah. We have a. Yeah.
I wouldn't go that far, but they're not a party I'm supporting or fond of or anything. But if those are the only people talking about civil liberties, basically, I mean, okay, the left, one guy from left party is pretty good as well. Then that's extremely worrying. But yeah, let's not talk about that. Let's talk about the US presidential election. Let me just do a test recording here. This is something. Okay, no, we don't want that. Why does it start recording at like 3 minutes? I set that up wrong. Okay, here we go. Say something.
Something.
That looks good. Okay, now I'm gonna need to quickly play that back. 1 sec. Okay, here we go. Say something.
Something.
Okay, that looks good. Okay, that sounds like we're ready to go.
Awesome.
Shall I start recording?
Yes, I will just share my 23-month sub anniversary on Foxtrot Alpha Bravo.
Woohoo! Awesome. No quid pro quo here. Yeah. Once again, no quid pro quo. Okay.
So what are you gonna buy me for my 2-year anniversary?
Oh God, do I now have to think about that? I don't know, something from a nice little Kobe model or something.
Yeah, you've been having lots of fun with that, haven't you?
I like those, yeah. You're up for that?
Well, I was joking, but I guess for like a collab stream or something, I suppose.
Oh, we should build one together. Yes.
Because we did at one point threaten to build that tank, the Sabaton tank, out of metal hammer. And we could, in theory, still do it with Dave. I'm sure he has it sitting somewhere in his house. We never got around to it. So, there's scope there for your sort of back page, fun, private citizen,
Yeah, I need to contact Dave and get that going. Exactly. You're right. You always remind me of this, and I say that, and then I forget again. It's just so much going on. Yeah, shall we start? Speaking of so much going on, this is probably going to be long. Okay. Wait, I need to get in the mood. I need to get an intro going here. So I'm once again joined by Mike from Ireland. Hello, Mike.
Hello. How's it going?
Well, as we say in German, den Umständen entsprechend. Well for the circumstances, I guess.
Yeah.
How is it going over there?
Yeah, not too bad. We're sort of just motoring on here in, what would this be, about the 4th week of the highest level of lockdown. We're all looking to start of December to see if...
threat level high. I repeat, threat level high.
It's threat level 5. Here now.
Threat level 5. I repeat, threat level 5.
And obviously now the whole conversation here is centered around Christmas. Can I come home for Christmas? Yes. Can I leave for Christmas? What can I do for Christmas? And I have a lot of sympathy for that, but I also go, maybe this year Christmas is a little bit less important.
Christmas is cancelled, everybody.
But that's just my opinion. But that's a whole other.
We should stick to the topic. So you are here, of course. I should once again say your full name. I don't want to neglect that. Mike Mullan-Jensen, our correspondent from Ireland. But you're on here because we like to discuss stuff, political stuff. And last time we talked about like a week before, a few days before the U.S. presidential election, we had a massive episode where we talked about that, and then we said we're going to reconvene afterwards. So that's it. So that episode was episode 45. If people are interested, I give a warning: 3 hours 48 minutes long.
Is that a Fab Industries record? Or
oh yeah, that is generally, I think, is probably the longest podcast episode I have ever released. Feels like
amazing.
It. I don't mind that. I like that. That for me, that's part of the medium, right? So it's you can pause it, of course, whenever you want, and I recommend that to people generally. But I think it's just it's good that we have the space if we want to, and we have the space today. So I should start with saying that I guess your prediction came true. Joe Biden is now the president-elect of the U.S.
I don't know if I predicted it, but I hoped that would be the outcome. You did ask me, I remember, and I think I was quite cagey at the time because I knew it would be very tight. And
I'm counting this as a prediction for you. Let's
okay.
I think
I'll take
fair. It. I'm quite surprised that Trump didn't win. I was thinking it was going to be tied too, but I definitely hadn't foreseen this. So I thought Trump would win, or like the opposite would have been. But I guess a lot of in the media in the U.S. were expecting a landslide victory for the Democrats, which this wasn't either.
Yeah, and is as many things we're going to talk about today. There is absolutely no black and white in this environment. You just can't pigeonhole stuff. There's so many layers to what people do, what their background is, what their current stance is on stuff, and I think here I'm alluding to we'll get stuck into Glenn Greenwald very soon. There's a lot of different backgrounds on why people vote for president, what they vote for their representative, and that's something else that we'll see in the show notes here, that just because you voted for Joe Biden doesn't mean that you put Democrats on the ballot further down, right? On the down.
Well, yeah. Maybe. That's clear. I mean, the down ballot for the Democrats is quite a disaster. I think the Democrats themselves have pretty much admitted that.
Mm-hmm. No, but and that's the thing. There's already infighting between Democrats and the different factions of the Democrats on what the path forward is, because as Biden himself has said, he's a transitional candidate. He's not going to be the future of the party, right? So yeah, lots of complexity ahead for sure.
I feel like so the one thing I maybe want to start with is I thought, so I didn't stay up for this. I thought that, I don't know, people who do that, I never understood that. I was quite sure that this would probably, at least, even if it was a clear victory, it would at least take a day. Because I mean, we talked about this last time, because there was lots of, I mean, this election was special, obviously because of COVID, and there was a lot more mail voting than the US is usually used to, which of course causes delays and all kinds of things. So I thought that was a definite thing. But I thought the peculiar thing to me was it looked for quite a while as if Trump was going to win, and then Biden flipped a few important states.
Yeah, and obviously, for regular commentators on American elections, and you have some people in the commentariat and in the media who've been there for decades, and they said the same thing. But obviously, this is unprecedented in the level of postal ballots that were employed, and that is exactly what happened. That for whatever background and sort of messages sent out, it was said that the Republicans seemed to favor to message like get out on the day, to vote on the day, while the Democrats were favoring going, not get yourself caught in massive lines and so on.
I wouldn't even go that far. I would. I mean, I don't know how is it for you, but I've I think I went to 1 or 2 elections when I was so. I think they started introducing voting with 16, so I got to vote when I was 16 for the first time, and I went to 1 or 2 in person, and ever since then I've voted by mail, which is in Germany is much more smoother than the process in the US for reasons we talked about. But I feel like to me it would be natural that Democrat voters would vote more by mail. Because I think the typical vote by mail person would be younger, would probably live in a city. This is of kind of, I want to vote. I want to, people like us, we want to get this done. I don't want to sit there on a day. It's like people who order stuff from Amazon, right? If you do that because you don't want to go into a shop and just completely disregard the pandemic, just normally. Right, or I don't want to. I use text messages because I don't want to talk to people on the phone. People like that would vote by mail, and I feel like overwhelmingly those people would vote a Democrat anyway. Whereas a typical Trump base, more rural people, people in more blue collar jobs, are more likely to just go to a polling, a voting place. Right. I feel like that's just a natural thing. I think if in Germany you would look at who's voting by mail and who's voting actually going somewhere and voting, I think you would see that the conservatives would be the ones who are, actually turning up.
And we have to be very clear here that this was known for a long time, right? Because both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, they have been spending months ramping up for this, years nearly. And it was no secret that this was what's going to happen. Like nobody really, if you got an honest answer from anybody in either camp, they would have said long time before the actual election that was the scenario, right? And that's why there was so much groundwork being done by Trump as well to frame this postal ballot, unprecedented numbers of postal balloting in a certain light. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt of that, I think. And
right, but so just so we get, before we get into the controversy here, right? Just so I get this right, the prevailing theory or the prevailing theory sounds, what we know pretty much. I wouldn't like to call it so much facts, but the established wisdom maybe is that they had it flipped, certain states flipped from Trump to Biden later on because they counted all those ballots by mail, and those were overwhelmingly for Biden. And Trump's votes were counted earlier because those were generally people turning up at the voting place, right?
That's the theory of the case, yeah. That's a broad spectrum of commentators on both sides of the political divide who would have said that, yeah.
I would probably, that I understand. I understand that. I don't know how you feel about this, but I still don't understand. So I don't understand why it takes them too long to tally all those votes, even though they have a lot more votes in our respective countries. I don't understand why mail-in ballots are counted later, but I guess that's because in some states the stamp date counts, right?
Yeah, and this is what I think we touched on it on the first episode, that there are different rules for different states. And you also have to take into account that some states passed legislation close to the election that required postal ballots to be counted after.
Right.
And sometimes you could construe it as sometimes that being gaming the system in order to get controversies, right? Because again, I'm saying, like, if it's a Republican majority in that state where they get to set the rules and they push the deadline for counting, that maybe fit into a certain Trump narrative there that could be used if it was very close to go, oh, hang on, this seems a bit fishy,
Well, I mean, I've seen some things that I definitely I don't want to I don't want to get this so much being Trump's theory. It is definitely, but I've seen some things that I find highly fishy. But we can get into that afterwards. Like my first question is, okay, so here's how voting in Germany works, right? So we always vote on a weekend, so that I think it's always is it always a Saturday? I think it's always a Saturday. But anyway, so there's a certain time. I think the polling places close at 5 p.m. in the afternoon, and I think they open at 10 in the morning or 8 in the morning, but they close at 5. And you're not allowed by law to count I think you can count, but you're not allowed to disseminate any information about counted votes or anything until all the polling places have closed. And that's why on German TV, traditionally at 5 o'clock, the first projection is shown.
Yeah.
Right, they have that projection before, and usually these are done by exit polling. They ask people who come out of the voting place who they voted for. And I think they count some ballots before. I think how it works is when the polling place opens, I'd have to look into the specific details, but so I mail in my mail-in ballot, and it has to be at the receiving, so at like for me it's like the state, the city office, the vote, whatever the local government office is. It has to be there by the start of the voting day. Right? So I think they just start counting the mail-in ballots at the moment the polling places open. Mm-hmm. Because they also start counting the ones they have then as well, I think, to get a head start on stuff. Yeah. And I just don't understand why they didn't do that in the US. What I've since understood is that I didn't know this. I should have. Maybe I learned it in university and forgot about it, but I learned that in the US, these whole voting rules are set by the states.
Yeah.
Who can also, I think, if I understand it correctly, could just say, okay, we're discounting our vote, and the state legislature decides who to send to the electoral college. If I mean, that would be highly.
No, I'm not sure that's right. Say that again.
Well, as far as I can understand, the American system of democracy works in such a way that the state legislature holds the election for the state, right? Mm-hmm. And when the system was set up, it wasn't. I don't think all the states voted on this kind of stuff. I think you didn't have a presidential election where every state voted in this presidential election. I think there were states where you just elected your state government, right? Mm. And the state government would then vote for the people in the state. So they would send the people to the electoral college. I think that's one of the reasons why they have an electoral college.
Yeah, but the way it is now is that the governing state party will select the electors that are allocated to that state.
Right, but they have legislation in place where they basically have to abide by the
most states. Yeah, they can't be faithless. There are a few states where you can still, in theory, have faithless electors. Yeah, who will not choose the candidate that the party tells them to.
Well, I think the states would be well. So let's say Georgia could say we're discounting this vote, and theoretically, I'm talking very theoretically here, right? As legal rules go, and say
not the state, but the electors are chosen by the governing party who won the election in that state.
Yeah, but then they go state to the legislature. College. What I'm talking about is the state legislature decides on the rules for the election.
Yeah.
But they could decide. So the state government could. Well, the state legislature is not the government, but the state legislature could decide we're discounting this election, and we're reverting back to something else. The question, I'm not saying that's going to happen because I think that would be unconstitutional. So I think that would be immediately challenged in the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to explain here, why I'm saying that is, I'm trying to explain to other people who might, as me, who listen to this, might not be from the US or might be from the US and might not be aware of how different the system is when you're coming from a European system.
And that's the danger, and I think we also talked about that on the first episode, that we have to have the caveat all the time. We're two Europeans here,
definitely. I mean,
with a great interest in what happens in the US, because it has ramifications for our lives over here. But in that sense, we're just trying to look at it from the outside, and that has its problems, of course. But we're aware of that as much as we can.
Exactly, and we're trying. And I'm trying. as I always say, I'm open to feedback. Please write in. privatecitizen.press. Get in contact if you understand this differently, or if you know, just let us know. Harry Vatana, by the way, we're recording this, streaming this recording live on Twitch. In Twitch chat, says that they think that in the past some states counted the mail-in ballots before. I think that happened with this election as well.
Yeah, and that shows the difference, right? Some states have provisions that it can be counted in some days before the election or whatever it is. Then they have the numbers ready when it all goes live, and in other cases, it's at a certain time afterwards, 3 days or
and
a week,
that makes
or
the whole thing very complicated.
Exactly. But again, it shows this is a completely different beast, this federal union of states, right? Because a huge country, each state, a country in itself, cultural, industry-wise, economy, everything, all of these things will make differences to how people perceive their citizen rights and citizen obligations, how they what makes a good election, how does that feel to a person in Michigan compared to somebody in California or something like that. It will be different, of course it will. So,
and I would like to point out that I'm going to put a link in the show notes as we were recording this. When we're saying Biden is, president-elect, this is according to, the media. Basically, it goes back to AP, who called this election, but these results have not been certified. So I have a link here to the Cook Political Report, who has the current standings for the popular vote. And if you look at that, then Florida, Delaware, North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Carolina, South Dakota, Vermont, and Wyoming, those election results, as we record this, have been certified. And the rest hasn't. But, looking at the numbers, it's pretty clear that Biden has won. Now, what kind of also really, really surprises me is, I don't know how it's in Ireland, but in Germany, in like 50 years of our democracy and of, the media, the mostly the television covering this and polling and all this stuff, I think it doesn't happen that there's a projection at the beginning of the evening. So this is 5 o'clock, right? 5 p.m. Mm-hmm. Which projects. I mean, we have a different system. There are more parties. There are coalitions. So the coalitions might change from the projection, but it never happened that this first projection said this chancellor has won. Right, this candidate has won, and then that never happened. There was one very, very famous, very close incident in '98 when Angela Merkel became chancellor, where very early predictions said that the reigning coalition of the Labour Party and the Green Party under Gerhard Schröder would retain the government, and which caused a very famous situation when at the evening. When Merkel and Schröder were in a television studio and being interviewed, Schröder was under the understanding that he was still chancellor, right? That he had won the election when most people were aware that he hadn't. So it was kind of like our mini Trump moment, which there have been interesting books written about why that happened, how that happened. But generally, there's a projection, and this will come. This will not change, right? I do not understand, really, with all the political machinery and all the analysis and all the media the US has, how they cannot immediately, when the polls have closed, determine at least who's president. Like, why states flip? I mean, in this election, okay, some states are extremely close, right? We're talking like 10,000, maybe even, I think at some point it was like 5,000 votes in exactly. One direction in a state that has like 2 million inhabitants or something like this. Or 2 million people voting, let's put it that way. That could be part of it, but...
And this is what we talked about as well, that actually for such a huge area and so much power in the world, 10,000 people to flip maybe the outcome of an election it's not a lot, is it? You know? And I mean, again, there was a lot of talk about the Al Gore and George W. Bush recount in Florida in 2000, right? Which was basically under 600 votes difference. And there's a lot of still controversy that really sort of trails from that, because it has echoes today from that time about how many people who were maybe disenfranchised at the time, suppressed as voters, and if it would have made a difference to those 600 votes that gave Bush the win. I mean, you know, so voter suppression, gerrymandering, and voter registration, things like that, they are extremely important. Every vote counts, even for a huge country like the US.
I mean, clear, you know? But so for me, yes, sure, it's that is amazing that like 600 votes decide this. I mean, I don't think it's worrying from a democratic standpoint. I think it is worrying if we are talking about this because, you know, we are so technology interested and, you know, obviously privacy implications, but generally we started this off with talking about manipulating the election. And I think the problem you have, if you have that few votes deciding everything, that the fewer votes of a margin there is, the easier it is to manipulate, right? So if we know that there are certain things you can do in the US with manipulating the vote that, for example, you can't do in Germany. I mean, just by the way voter registration works, you can register certain people, then get their ballots, fill them out for them, and hand them back in. And we know that this has been done. You know, I'm not talking about this election. I know historically both parties have done that. Vote canvassing happens. There are people going from house to house in the US asking people, so are you going to vote? I'm going to fill out your ballot for you. Will you give me the ballot? There have been people paid for ballots. But generally that wouldn't be a problem because you have so many votes, right? So if you have a very stable and resilient system, the problem is because of the swing states we talked about last time, right? And the thin margins you just mentioned, you could presumably flip a state with just canvassing a few hundred ballots.
And I think here I'd like to talk a bit about Georgia, right? Because Georgia is one of the swing states that really came as a bit of a political earthquake.
Currently Biden plus 0.3%, by the way.
Exactly. And so he won by 11,000 votes or something like that in Georgia.
So we have 2,472,182 for Biden right now, 2,458,010 votes for Trump.
Yeah. So there's a story here, right? Because there's a woman called Stacy Abrams, and you might have heard of her.
Yes, I put a link. So you sent the story. I'll put that in the show notes so people can read it.
It's an incredible story because Stacy Abrams ran for governor in 2018 in Georgia. She narrowly lost to, I think it was incumbent at the time, Kemp, I think his name is. Now, that happens all the time. There's nothing, untoward in that. But the issue about the loss was that at the time there was also a controversy around who should be allowed to vote in the gubernatorial races. And there had been tens of thousands of people that had been struck off the register. because they were assumed to have left the state because they hadn't maybe voted for once or twice. So there was this sort of, let's say, voter registration revision going on, where the legislature was like, well, these people haven't voted for 2 elections, so they probably moved out, and then they were taken off the electoral roll. The problem with that is, if you don't actually ask people, are you still living here? What happened was that these people still lived in the state, and in this election they wanted to vote, but when they showed up, they didn't have a ballot because they've been struck off the register, right? And then it's too late. So, like, there's a lot of speculation here, but there's, I think what then happened is a testament to what good democracy is, because Stacy Abrams went, okay, I think I was basically cheated here because the state went and did something a bit nefarious.
Okay, I have an issue with that. Mm-hmm. Before you go on, I don't understand why. I mean, I understand the problem you're saying, and I think it should never be that way. But how, like, if you want to vote and you live in the US, right, and to be guaranteed to vote, you have to register beforehand or check that you are on the, that you that you will get a ballot, right? Like, why wouldn't you do that? And if you don't do that, and then you don't get to vote, yeah, sure, that is a, I think that's a process that shouldn't exist. But I mean, that's the process.
Yeah, but I think you've sort of also mentioned that you don't understand why it's so difficult for people to get ballots, and that's obviously because, and I tend to disagree, because we come from societies that have quite comprehensive infrastructure for personal identification and addresses and
no,
so
I understand.
On,
right? Yeah, I understand that the German thing with the ID card is very special. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one element of it. So you're right. Yes, if you're a very active citizen and you want to make your voice heard and all these good things, then yes, you would go like, am I still on the electoral roll, and I want my ballot, and so on. However, Stacey Abrams says she's black. She would, as a Democratic candidate, would tend to attract maybe other types of voters or potential voters that are not sure that they actually have a voice in society. Maybe they, for different reasons, they can feel that it doesn't matter or whatever. And this is what the story is about. That when she experienced this, where it was quite clear that there was a lot of work going on to make sure that the electoral roll in inverted commas was up to date, but basically they removed. I'm just reading here from the article, how Republicans are stealing Georgia. At the time, they removed over 665,000 registered people on their old right.
And they're probably let me name the elephant in the room here. They probably removed a lot of black people.
Yes,
because they were sure that they wouldn't vote for Republicans, which is
Exactly.
I'm not saying it's good. No. It is quite reprehensible, but it is an understandable strategy.
Yeah. So anyway, there was a lot of electoral roll revision going on, and whether or not it was a right thing to do or in good faith or bad faith and all that, you can look into the story and make up your own mind.
No, I'm sure it's what is in bad faith. Fair faith. I'm not saying that. Saying that. I'm pretty sure it was.
So what happened was Stacey Abrams went, okay, I will play the long game and I will flip this state for my party. And basically, since 2018, she has registered over 800,000 new voters in Georgia, piecing together all of these people who were removed, and also new voters and young people. And I think people like her are the ones that have a major part in what happened with Joe
Totally.
Biden.
I mean, I understand. I mean, I think that's why they flipped Georgia. I didn't understand that before, but I think that is probably the case. But my analysis from this is the following. So I read, so the electoral, you read stuff where it's like the electoral college is the problem, right? I mean, the problem for me here with the American system is quite easy. They have a problem with people who think their voice doesn't count, or they don't vote, or they're not registered, or you can't get a ballot for some reason. Like, they need to fix their process in a way that everybody gets a ballot, right?
Yep.
And they can do that. I mean, I know there's a resistance. I don't really... I understand that it's a fact. Of course, I can, because of the as you said, because I'm German and we have a very different system. I can't, on an emotional level, understand it. I can only understand it intellectually, right? I don't understand people going, "Oh, ID cards is stupid." I know that is like, it's dumb that I have to register whenever I move with the government, right? I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. But it works for the electoral process. I'm not saying the US should do something like this, but they have the ability to know where people live and if they're eligible to vote and send them a ballot, right? I mean, Google, for example, I'm just saying Google knows all kinds of shit for you, about you. Facebook knows all kinds. I'm not saying Facebook and Google should do it, but I'm saying...
It's really interesting that you mention them, because if you keep reading the open democracy piece there, that's what some of the journalist investigators did. They got people who had the ability to scrape this kind of stuff together from different sources, and especially the big online retailers, because they're like, as you yourself say, well, you might not know if you're getting a ballot, but you sure also know if your next hard disk or monitors are gonna arrive from Amazon, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's Amazon knows where you live.
So I think that's a problem. And I think also the problem is, so there's a process problem, and I think there's an understanding. I mean, obviously the American education system in this regard is crap. You need to teach kids what democracy is, how it works, and that you need to vote, and what you need to do in your system to get a vote. You need to do that. They're not doing that. Exactly. I hear Americans on TV, in papers, in podcasts saying we're not a democracy, we're a republic. They say this over and over again. They don't understand the difference between a democracy and a republic. It's not even this. You're not even talking about the same thing. A republic is a way to organize your country and your government, and democracy is the method by which you elect your government. And yes, I understand that they were a republic, and they might not have been democratic throughout the republic when it was founded, but Germany is a republic and a democracy. Generally, republics tend to be democracies.
And
except maybe the Italian Republic under Mussolini.
Oh yes,
that would be a good example of the.
You maybe don't want to emulate that. No, and you bring up a lot of good points, Fab, and I think you're coming from a good place in it, which you have to. And the issue here is that this is a massive issue everywhere in the U.S. I think, where there can be several factors that for your background, if you're not the top rung sort of citizen, and let's be honest, it is the white white population that still gets disproportionately favored here, that inclusivity needs to be a part of it, but there will be a lot of institutional forces that will push back on this. And that's why a story like Stacy Abrams is really important, because she fought for this for 2 years, like spent her whole time just fighting to get every single person she could scrape together onto the register, educate them on what they were supposed to do for the presidential election, all that. And she managed to get the result in there together with the rest of the Democratic Party organization there, of course. But, we can only speculate what would have happened maybe if somebody like her hadn't actually just took the bull by the horns and just tried to do something about it. And 10,000, 11,000 votes in getting 800,000 new registrations that's not a massive landslide. That is just sort of trickling over the line, isn't it? You know, it's I think it's a bit scary for, as you say, for democracy and how people think of themselves going forward. You know, there's a lot of this kind of work that has to be done for people who are disadvantaged, not just but black and other ethnic minorities, but also people who are poor or as you say, have not had the right opportunities in life to be this kind of well-educated citizen that knows what's happening, you know. And I think that's the Democratic Party's real challenge here. How do they address this going forward? Because this is not an election to end this kind of way of doing things. Like we will see this again in
you mean 2024. The division? Yes,
the divisions, the real sort of ugly politics as a football match kind of thing, where it doesn't really matter what happens as long as your team scores, right? I mean, it's crazy sometimes. I think where's the moral compass gone? Where's the compromises and working to better yourself as a society for everyone? Where has that gone? Like, it's completely out the window.
I have I mean, yes, you're right on that, but I have a completely different question.
Okay.
So I look at this election, which was incredibly close, with incredible close margins. And I look at what the press wrote in the last 4 years since Trump was elected about Russian interference in the vote, right? And I'm asking you, with margins like this, how can we, if that was true, right? Let's just talk about the stuff we talked about last time we talked together, about the Cambridge Analytica type nudging and the micro targeting we were talking about, political ads. Like, if that actually influences people, right? Then with these slim margins, how can we be sure that this election wasn't manipulated? I think we can't. In what direction whatsoever. And what I find incredibly asinine is that with Trump, we had these discussions in the media, and with Biden, we don't have them. Right? Okay, now this time we wouldn't assume that, like, let's just pose that this election was manipulated by a state actor and they got Joe Biden to win, right? Mm-hmm. According to the prevailing wisdom in the media, it surely wouldn't be the Russians because they want Trump to win. What about if it was the Chinese?
Mm-hmm.
Why is nobody? Why is that not a discussion? Why? I can tell you why, because the media is really happy that Biden won. Yeah. But I like that. That's the division you have, and I just don't feel. I personally, I completely accept that this was the election. That's the result. I'm a realpolitik follower, right? But Biden has won this. Whatever happens here, Biden has won this. This is the prevailing wisdom in society. That's what we settled on. But I am incredibly worried about this result. I don't know if it was manipulated, but I think it could have easily been done. I mean, either by methods, voter suppression you talked about, by vote canvassing, so the other opposite, by faking ballots, by hacking electronic voting systems.
But you see, the electronic voting systems were less used in this election, weren't they?
Well, they were less used, but they were used overwhelmingly. What was actually less used is that I'm actually looking into this, and it's kind of hard. There's so much reporting going on and not much reporting on that. There's some reporting on these Dominion voting systems and stuff. I think what they did, they changed a lot to machines where you also have which is good, where you have a paper printout.
Yes, exactly.
And
they need some kind of verification between those two numbers, isn't it?
Right. No, basically what you need to do is now you need to recount all the paper slips. And I'm what I couldn't find out for this episode, and I'm going to look into this, is where are they doing this, and are they actually doing that?
Yeah. No, I think that's going on. Yeah, I've seen that.
Well, because the other way to manipulate the election with machines like this is you would just manipulate the number, right? Then AP or Fox or whoever calls the election, right? And then you have a president-elect.
Yeah.
And then 2 months later, you have all these recounts, and then you figure out that something's gone wrong. But by that time, the society itself was already invested in the result.
Yeah, they've moved on,
And you're not going to, you don't want to throw, that people wouldn't want to do the election again, right?
Yeah.
And then you'd have a scandal, but, a year later or whatever. But in the end, you had the candidate win that you wanted to win.
Yeah. Again, the complexity here is high. I think voting levels have been unprecedented, right? This is the most participated in presidential vote ever, like by any stretch of America's history. And I would say my comment there is that for good or for ill, the way politics has been conducted on both sides and the media froth and so on, it has actually activated a lot of people, right? I mean, you can't say that it's all ghosts and dead people. It's actual voters who've been out on the street posting their ballots, voting early, and generally
on both sides.
I tend to think that's
on
a
both
good thing.
sides, right?
Yeah, good side, because obviously people are in the media are tearing their hair out because Trump got 4 million more voters, right, than 16, and I'm a bit like, well, I mean, it's the highest participation level ever. Why is that a problem? Like, of course you'll get more votes for him. So I don't understand that one.
Well, I can tell you why, because the media was convinced, and you can look this up in the last half year of reporting, that this would be a landslide. The New York Times, the Washington Post, they were all convinced that this was going to be an absolute landslide for Joe Biden. And they're dismayed that it is this close. They're happy that Biden won, but they're dismayed that it's this close.
But this is the other side of it then, that yes, it's close. And I was cagey on the first one because I didn't think it was going to be a landslide. As I said, I hoped that Biden would get over the line because personally, I don't like Trump, and that's my
I think you analyzed this really well. Yeah.
But how should we put it? Like the likelihood of the amount of votes that Biden got to beat Trump, that they were all somehow influenced it. I still think the amount of votes across the states that swung it for him, I think that would have been quite an achievement to do it like faking ballots, like physically doing something that would be nearly impossible. But then you're right on the sort of nudging side, and this is something that you can't quantify very well, and a lot of people have tried. And I think in the first one, we talked about how obviously it was part of this 2016 election. You can't ignore that. How much of an effect it had is still up for discussion. I think there are people on Trump's side, and most likely as well on Biden, for whatever reason, that they're obviously trying to do this kind of nudging, because once the election was in motion, there was a lot of statisticians out there that were able to really pretty closely go like at a certain point down the funnel of when they'd seen how much had come in, what the levels of ballots were for one or the other side. It fitted into some models where they were able to predict that this is going to swing for Biden, right?
Yeah.
And obviously these kind of people work for the parties and the stakeholders on either side as well. So they run all these kind of wargaming scenarios where there's a level of participation, levels of voting for each candidate, and then what happens in the electoral college shift. And it can be done. If you have the right brains in the room, you can sort of math your way into the different paths. And that's what Cambridge Analytica and those type of companies, about 10 years ago, that they were beginning to do this kind of proto, like, okay, let's say that we push this amount of stuff into this kind of group. can we get a swing of a couple of thousand or maybe 10,000 votes? And you can then see, okay, you are actually able to then do a little bit of a domino effect here. If you get the right combination of the right candidate, messaging, support from the infrastructure in the party that candidate is from, maybe some good news tidbits that you can throw to the wolves and create a bit of froth and so on. And it's a highly complex thing where no single thing achieves that outcome. But if you make enough holes in the Swiss cheese, you will get your agenda through at some point, right?
And I think both sides are doing it. So, for example, I've seen what I think is credible reports, but the research hasn't been published yet, so I don't really know how to believe it. But I think it's credible. For example, there was this guy who does these. It's called he does like research on ephemeral experiences, right? This is this nudging thing where like a website or a website shows you something, but it's like in your Facebook feed, right? But it's only there once, and it influences you, but then it's gone. Mm-hmm. And it's not on a website that gets captured by the Internet Archive or whatever, so you can't go back and look at it. So and he did like this test where he had hundreds of thousands of people install like software that captured their web access. And they did some research where they think they can prove that in the run up to the election, so Google had a if you visited the Google homepage from the US, it had a go vote, remember to vote message. And they think that was only shown to people that Google thought were not progressive, right? Basically, Republican Democrat voters. Now, it's I see. I haven't seen the data isn't out, so I don't know if I can believe that. You have to
be careful,
Yes.
Careful.
So I don't know if it might be a complete conspiracy theory, but you could see something like this happen. I mean, Google could easily do that. They know from your searches. They know just by the cookie in your browser if you lean Trump or Biden.
Yeah, and
they would be. I mean, if you saw especially this is something I'm going to do episodes about on this podcast because it has incredible privacy implications. But you saw that all major tech companies, all CEOs of all major tech companies were pro Biden. They all of them congratulated them really early. You know that Google's pro Biden. You know that. Facebook is, there are reports of whistleblowers within Google who say, they did like nudging stuff. I don't know if I believe that, but I mean, they're clearly pro-Biden.
With Facebook, I would be a little bit wary as well, because I think Facebook has gone into the level where I don't think they necessarily really mean if they're from one side or the other or for one side or the other. Facebook's become a little bit of a state in its own.
Yeah,
right.
But I think they
Google as well.
I mean, Trump was specifically threatening. He was threatening Twitter and Facebook with with the whole safe harbor thing, right? I do think they felt. I don't know what section. What the section 502. God, now I have to Google this.
Yeah, but on the other hand, it might be that he publicly lambasts them, but privately. Him and his entourage have probably profited mightily over the years from being able to push all kinds of stuff on Facebook without being sort of held back by them. So I would say there's a little bit of playing to the gallery, where Trump has to seem to sort of step away from Facebook and give them a right old bashing, but like Facebook was integral to his election victory in 16 for sure.
Well, but you think the question is, was that Facebook's leadership, or just Facebook the mechanism? You know what I mean? I mean, Facebook basically the ad mechanism. And also, I think they didn't
do a completely separate thing on this, or maybe something for you, because there's so much stuff just around what decisions Mark Zuckerberg has made and his close management team, what they have said outwardly and what they inwardly have continued to do and continue to allow. There's so much stuff there, and I'm sure it's the same for Google as well, that they would, how they're all sort of progressive in their messaging and blah blah blah, but underneath, the sort of the ad and messaging and selling of space and what is prioritized and whatever, it's hardcore business that
I was talking about Section 230, by the way, Communication Decency Act. I mean, I agree with you. I'm not saying it's about being progressive. I think specifically in this election, it is about the Obama administration was quite friendly to the big tech companies. And I think it's specifically about Joe Biden. I think they think he's gonna follow the same policies, and I would think so too. He hasn't said anything against that. I agree with you that they're gonna run political ads from both sides, right? Because they make money off that. And
also, they have now, because they've been criticized from all sides about what they've allowed to be posted, was some of the stuff, and I know this probably gets your heckles up, but I mean, stuff that is so actually wrong that it's nearly incitement to violence or something like that. Stuff like that. You would need to have some kind of policy for it.
No, not like, if it's not incitement to violence, not in the US. That is what Section 230 is explicitly about. They're not. They don't. If they don't, the social network should not editorialize. At the moment where they editorialize, they become a publication, and they are to be held legally accountable. I think that,
Yeah, that's the distinction, isn't it? What do they want to be? Do they want to just be a platform, or do they want to be a news reporting thing? And that has been a gray area for a long time.
Well, I do not understand why they wouldn't just be a platform. That is their. That is why they. I mean, that is their big power. As a publication, as a newspaper online, you are responsible for what your writers write. And you can get sued, which is a serious problem in the US. Twitter can't be sued for anybody posting anything on the platform because of this law. Like, why would they jeopardize that? I do not understand that. I do understand. They have a political agenda. Twitter, especially the company.
Or they've been forced into maybe having a political agenda.
No, I don't think
outwardly.
so. No, I don't think so. I think the founders of the company, and it's well reported, the culture of the management of the company leans in a certain progressive political direction. And I've experienced this myself personally. I've experienced having written things on Twitter that I think the Twitter itself didn't agree with politically. And this is why I was never my account was never verified, where other people that worked at the same company like me in the same position got a verification mark because they said they work in that position. Okay. And they didn't even reply to me. And I'm not the only one who's experienced this. I think Twitter especially is very partisan. My thing wasn't a progressive conservative thing. I just criticized them, right? I wrote commentary about the Milo Yiannopoulos thing when he was thrown off Twitter, and how Twitter uses check marks and that to punish people. And,
so in a way, if we're talking about, for example, an elected official like the President of the United States, then the duty of let's say, overseeing that person's conduct would fall to
the press.
To Congress, right? They're the ones that can say, okay, you're definitely doing something that's wrong here, so we will blah blah blah, something, right?
Well, the press and Congress. I don't think if Trump tweets something and it's factually not correct.
Oh, you mean the press? Like they're the representative of the public. Yeah, okay.
The press's job is to go. The president just tweeted that it's wrong because, and they've been doing that. Yeah. So why does Twitter need to, why is there a discussion about Twitter deleting stuff the president said? It is important if the president says something that is not true or, I don't know, endangers world peace, right? You don't delete that.
So Twitter has to go, okay, we're the medium for this kind of mass communication, and then somebody has to go, right, okay, we're following whatever the president says. Obviously, according to this and this and this fact, this is correct or this is not correct.
The press needs to go, this is wrong because, or Congress, if Trump, let's talk about Trump, had insulted a foreign dignitary, right?
Oh yeah, remember this from your from your hate speech thing.
If he just if he's on the brink of causing a war with North Korea because he's hate tweeting the North Korean head of state, for example, and Congress goes, this is not in the interest of the American people and the people who elected us and the president. And we need to, I don't know what they would do. I don't know, censure the president, whatever there will be.
But they're the only ones that actually have power over the office of the president, right? That they can impeach him and all those kind of things.
So then they should do that.
Yeah.
And you need those tweets online to prove that that's what he did. And taking them down is absolutely idiotic because the North Koreans will have seen them and they can use them if they want to start a war. Deleting them off Twitter doesn't change anything. It's absolutely idiotic to me, but
and I think that in a roundabout way we're sort of getting towards because we did have a little bit of mention of Russia before, and we should probably get stuck into then the media's role, specifically here one of your journalist heroes.
Let me get into that. I want to talk about that because I think my thinking is. I think this election was manipulated. I don't think it was manipulated by faking ballots and maybe a little bit and by, suppressing voters. I'm not saying that didn't all exist, but I don't think it made a difference. And I don't think the nudging made so much a difference because in this election, we were talking about ephemeral experiences and little nudges and all this shit. Forget all this shit. For 4 years, even 5 years before Trump was even in office, and before he was even from the point he was the Democratic candidate for the Republican Party, large parts of the American media decided they do not want him as a president and fought tooth and nail for him to not be president in 2016, to have him impeached, to have some kind of scandal uncovered so he would be impeached, whatever. And in this election, they fought tooth and nail to have Joe Biden elected. I mean, you can't discount that. To me, that is obvious.
But what about the Fox News fan club then for Donald Trump that has stood by him all the way up to election night?
I don't subscribe to that. I probably watched a lot more Fox News.
You've just said that the media had a huge part to play.
Yeah, they had. I just don't think Fox News was as much on Trump's side as you think, especially in this election. Have you listened to Fox News lately?
That's what I mean. That when you got close to the time, at near election day, I guess they were trying to sort of pull back a little bit.
No. It's not been run by. It's actually, who's it? His son. It's not being run by the same people anymore.
Oh, you mean Robert Murdoch's son?
Yeah.
Well, there's two, as far as I understand, there's two arms to the Fox part, where one part is their sort of entertainment arm or opinion, if you want to call that, and the other one is kind of like a news desk. And there is a bit of war between them, and a variety on some of the,
As I see it, there are hosts, high-profile hosts on Fox that are on Trump's side. Hannity, people like that. But they are there because they can't fire them, right? I personally think that the Fox would have fired these people if they could have. I think they probably have contracts where they can fire him, but then he gets a salary for the next 10 years, and they don't get any content out of him or something like this. I don't think Fox was as much on the side of Trump as you think. But let's leave that aside. That's totally not the issue. We can assume.
Well, I'm just saying that it wasn't like a completely clean slate of biased media against Trump.
No,
like
I completely agree with you, but I do feel it was about at least 75%. Even on publications where high-profile publications where I think that they're completely pro-Biden, like the New York Times, of course they also had dissenting voices. But I'm not even talking about their coverage and the fact that what they reported. I'm talking about their writers and their editors and the personality, the news readers on TV, whatever, openly saying in social media that that Trump is evil, that he's not their president, all this kind of stuff. So I'm not saying that that's a human thing, right? And that's their opinion. And I'm not saying they should have that opinion. I'm just saying it's clear that was their opinion and that they worked to get Trump first impeached and now Biden elected.
But in a recent Gallup, let's say one thing that I found on there, and I think Gallup, it's one of many large opinion poll companies, but I don't think they're necessarily better or worse than any of the other.
Well, I think that some of them I recently found out are actually owned by newspapers. So Gallup at least is not owned by a newspaper or like a media organization. So they got that going for them.
And if you look at they've sort of run a tracker over some years, some decades, and the general American perception of mass media has sort of gone down steadily for a while. Like, what is it that this? I think it's about in the 40% or so.
Yeah, from 53% in what's this, 97, 96 to 40% now.
So about 40% trust mass media to some degree.
Fair amount, it says.
So I would sort of counteract your. I know we're going to get into it because editorial and so on. Yes, let's get into that. But I think the press has a part to play. Obviously, it has, and I think you can turn it around and go. When Trump was selected as candidate by the Republican Party, that was a bit of a political earthquake there, because he was kind of up until that point viewed as a little bit of a joke candidate.
Yeah, the press made him. The press made him. Yeah. They covered him incessantly, which is why he won that election.
As the candidate for the Republican Party. Now, after that, then obviously there was a lot of machinery that clicked into gear to make sure that then he was propelled forward. And I think I found this really interesting article called Media Narratives, because then, of course, you started formulating a narrative around Trump and around Clinton, because that's the way it works in the US. It's very, very personality based, right? And you would see that to a certain extent as well in the UK. I think continental reporting on politicians is a little bit more balanced, I would say, but maybe you can see in Germany that it's turning toward personality cult as well. But anyway, that's a whole other strand. But basically, they were talking about how once the narrative is fixed, then it's very, very difficult for a candidate to break out of it, right? And
by the way, this is not a political. I mean, this is not an election issue at all. This is with anything. I see this in technology reporting all the time. It's like with the pandemic apps and all this kind of stuff, right? There's a narrative and it's fixed, and then it's exactly
So you're right that I'd say what people who have studied this and know more about it than I do, at least, they would support that yes, there is a lock-in at some point where from there onwards the narrative is set, and it's nearly impossible to change the media narrative after that, no matter nearly what the person says or does. And that applied both to Clinton and Trump. And it's very interesting to sort of go through where they pick out the different scenarios where Clinton was obviously, I think they say that she was, the narrative was that she was a sort of a cold, calculating sort of aloof person, and that got sort of baked into whatever she did. And Trump was kind of the wild man, sort of wild card. What is they call it? Kind of a jack out of the box type character, and that got applied to everything that he said or did. And if you go through that article, it's actually quite interesting how it, when you look back on it, it kind of fits, right? Because even when Clinton started going on the attack and then sort of trying to call out some of the things that she saw as Trump failures or dangers or whatever, it was basically just boxed in as here she goes again, she's over prepared, very clinical, it's all a bit boring, right? And yada yada, while everybody expected Trump to, no matter what he said, that it would have to have some kind of shock factor, right? And and lying. So Clinton was associated with lying, right? And probably there was a bit of a stink there from her husband's time in office as well. So for example, do you remember the time where she had pneumonia or something on the campaign trail, and she was a bit faint, and obviously Trump went on the attack straight away and called her weak or whatever. But the way they worked in the media as well was that they didn't sort of then go to Clinton's defense, really. In that sense, it was more that, she didn't tell us that she was sick, so again, there we go, she's lying, right? So it's interesting, and you have to kind of start building your own media narrative analysis, I think, when you go through these elections and try and see where you can break out of those frames that the media is trying to impose on reporting, right? Because at least if you do that, you will sort of sometimes have a little reflection. I think we talked about this before in some of our other podcasts about how you look at news and journalism and so on. And you have to learn reflection. It's a hard thing to do because a lot of stuff is baked into when you open the newspaper or a website or whatever. That you read it, and if you sort of switch off your critical brain, then the narrative will just be set for you, and then you get it reinforced.
Yeah, I think, specifically the problem is that we can do that because, if you're listening to this podcast, I'm pretty sure you're a conscious consumer of media, right? Otherwise, why would you listen to like 3 hours of random European guys talking about the US election? Maybe you think there's some information there. I think the problem is, like, with this, to quickly go back to this distrust of mass media, I think this doesn't apply to what I was thinking about or talking about the election, because a trust is not required. I think I've been reading Bernays again, and it works like advertising, right? If you ask people, do you trust advertising? I think the majority of people would say no, right? They know that advertising is trying to sell you a product, and it's putting it in a positive light, and it's often not quite correct, and they know that. But advertising still works, right? It works in other ways. It works by exposing you to ideas and bombarding you with things in certain situations. And even if you're distrustful about, let's say, the media saying something, let's pick up the lying thing. That came a thing about Trump, right? Even if you're distrustful of the media saying Trump lies all the time, you hear it again and again and again and again, and it burrows into your subconscious, right? And you need to be very, very critical. You basically need to be like me to resist this, or like you maybe, but you need to. It's hard.
Yeah, but at a certain point, Fab, you have to go, like, when you look at the fallout from the election, and let's pick at one of the, like, Trump has, over the 4 years that he's been in office, there's a litany of things that he said that is untrue, like factually actually incorrect.
But
Fab, no.
What are you basing this on? Because this wisdom generally is based on a website compiled by the New York Times, which, I don't know, counted like 7,000 lies that Trump said while he was in office, of which I would say 95 to 98% are not lies. They're not lies. If Trump says, I believe something. That can't be a lie.
Yeah, okay. This is the old. We've had this conversation many times about,
the guy dissembles. He misleads people. Yes, sure, but all politicians do that. Joe Biden does that the same way.
Okay, but yes, an average standard politician will mislead, evade, jump around the subject, and so on. And there's a certain standard for that where we recognize, okay, this is a politician.
Right. And Trump does that more than others.
He absolutely is
a lot more than others.
In my opinion, he is the all-time. If he wants a medal, I'll give him one, because he has the medal for the all-time high, like complete off the scale, stratospheric, misleading, Fantasyland statements. Like, he would put some of those Iraqi military figures at the invasion of Kuwait to shame. Like, it's really like,
because
wow.
but I feel like that's because he talks more. Like, would you? But like in the yeah, he says things. That's all these comments that they pick up.
I think you're beginning to excuse him a little bit.
No, I'm not. Maybe I am. But what I want to ask you, if taking all of this together, do you think he misled the American public more than Richard Nixon?
I haven't thought of that.
So I would say no, because I think if you mislead somebody in very crucial ways really badly, it's a quality over quantity kind of thing, right?
So Nixon, what did he in the end get nailed for? He wasn't even impeached, right?
He didn't get nailed. He just stepped down.
He stepped down, didn't he? Yeah, because he was probably
but
told that we will remove you if you don't step down.
Until the tapes were released, he denied all of that.
And he denied that he had carried out surveillance. Was it?
Yeah, that they were that they had had a plot to break into the was it the DNC offices in Washington?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So basically, he denied He denied having orchestrated an illegal act.
The worst political scandal in the history of the United States. Yes.
Yeah. So. If that's the benchmark, Trump is he is again gold standard compared to Richard Nixon's bronze. Like
I'm just not off that.
It pales into insignificance what this guy has been doing.
But I think that's just okay. So we that's a difference in opinion we have. We can have that. Okay.
No, but listen, what the difference is, at the time Nixon was told by his own party to step down, otherwise he would be removed because it was politically not gonna work out for them unless he left, right? So the difference this time is that the Republican Party somehow have been willing to look through all of these things that are
not somehow. Somehow.
They've decided that they can take the risk, and they're able to protect him.
And I completely understand, because the impeachment threat to Nixon was an actual threat. The thing that Nancy Pelosi and Schumer cooked up was a joke. And the Republicans saw that. There was no chance. I said this from the very beginning. There was no chance of Trump getting impeached because of that. And they saw that. It's political calculus, right?
But this is again the point about like who polices the commander in chief, right? And that's the Congress, and that's what. And I take your point completely, and I think we've debated this to death in other episodes, so I'm not gonna rehash it. So my point there is just to summarize that I am deeply disappointed that that's the state of the American political ambition now, is to have no moral compass at all.
I can understand that. I agree with you on that. And what I'm trying to make, I'm not trying to discuss Trump with the debate about Trump with you. I'm really not. So what I'm disappointed about is, given this situation, I'm disappointed about the U.S. media, right? I'm disappointed about the New York Times making up a list of things that are not lies, when there is actually stuff they could report on. right? They're reporting on Trump having all these kinds of things that he didn't say. There's like, he said drink bleach. He didn't mention bleach. If you listen to the talk, the word bleach does not appear. Same thing with the very fine people. It's taken completely out of context. But why? Why do you have to do that? If the guy says enough stupid things.
I'm sorry, but I think you sometimes you're very square in the way that you go like, oh, okay, here's this person, he's saying this.
I'm not square.
Let me finish. I'm being very kind here. I'm sorry, but
I'm sorry.
What I'm saying is like I like the way that you are willing to take what people say at face value, right? Because that's your journalistic instinct going like, okay, let me think about what it is that's being said here. At the face value of what's being said. So I totally respect that. So I'm not having a dig at you for being naive or something like that. But when I watch that clip, the bleach clip, I see a president who does not like to talk about this because he knows it's a bad state of affairs that he can't necessarily win in any way. Then he starts riffing on things that has just sort of popped into his head about ultraviolet light and
No, it's not popped into his head. He talked with Burks about the study. Yes.
And then you have this woman, this poor, health executive person that he had dragged into the room, and then sort of and he turns and goes like, I've heard you talk about this, and she's sitting there, and you can see how if she could be anywhere else in the world at this point, she would love it, right? Because she is embarrassed to her core, right? And this is what I mean that
I completely agree with you. So, but my question is, if you're a conscientious journalist writing for the New York Times, right? Yeah. Why can't you do what you just did and describe the situation and it's bad enough? What you can't do is you can't write Trump said. Can't we do? Can we use? No, they didn't even say that. They basically said he said something. He didn't. He asked her a question.
He
didn't advocate anything.
But that's what they were saying. That he said that you should do this, right?
And I completely understand you when you have a point when you say that's probably how he wanted to come across. I'm prepared to accept that. But as a journalist, you have to say that in a commentary. You can't do a news story portraying something that happened in a different light.
Yeah. So what the message should have been was that the president then started theorizing about the use of something which wasn't supported at that time by the.
You basically just have to explain that he obviously talked with Burks beforehand. I mean, you don't even know, but you kind of have to explain that they talked about what they talked about. We figured that out later. Is a paper where on contact, like on a surface, right? They had shown that disinfectant and ultraviolet light kills SARS-CoV-2. Which is completely understandable. That's something, we had expected from the beginning. If you know anything about viruses and lipid boundaries, you know that that's going to happen.
Yeah.
The incredible thing was when Trump goes off his speech, he goes off prompter and starts like riffing, as you put it, about can't we just inject that into people? And that is obviously ridiculous.
Yeah.
But you can say that without just saying he said something. But they take the shortcut. They They are too
because
fucking slack.
The narrative
to explain
is built.
it. And that is the problem. And I'm not my problem generally is not that when I say the media manipulated the election. I'm not saying they did that concerted, right? And my problem is not that happened. That I understand why the media was largely against Trump. He picked that fight himself. He started that fight. He started the fake news thing.
Yeah.
He started it. So it's no wonder he got nailed by it. And I don't mind that. What I mind is as a journalist and as a private citizen, so to speak, the way it went and the media's self-respect and the self-respect of journalists in this whole process went largely out of the window. And now we're stuck with that. Now we're stuck with media who thinks it's okay to just ad-lib things and make up situation loosely based on reality and publish that. That's the problem. And the thing is, this will bite us in the ass again. You know, the fact that Biden just won won't save us from that. This is still the same journalist writing the same stuff. That's what I mean, that
there's a lot of hard work ahead. And I mean, Trump was fully aware of what he was doing, as you say. It was brinksmanship with the news media, because he knew, I mean, he's a ratings guy, right? That's all he talks about, the ratings of. And as you can see in one of the show notes, like, you know, the moment that Fox News started being a little bit critical of what was going on, where they cut out on his speech and things like that when he was going completely off the rails, then, you know, he says, hey, they're forgetting the golden goose here. You know, he's completely aware.
And he's right on that, right?
Yeah.
So the media, I think, will get a nasty awakening, because, like, so they covered Trump. They made Trump in the beginning, as you said, when he was running, for a Republican candidate. They made him because he was good news. He was good content, and people were reading the stuff. And then now they've had 4 years of railing on him, and people reading that like crazy. And they're gonna miss him. Because Biden is not going to get the same ratings.
There's a cold turkey with the golden goose that's going to happen. And I'm a bit worried myself here in this sense, because the current rumor is that actually Trump has been sort of planning to just boot Fox anyway and do his own media empire, right?
I actually think that would be fun to see.
No, but in a way I can see it happening, right? Because
totally.
Like when it comes to media and ratings and appearance to attract attention and stuff like that, he is a master. Like I have to give it to the man that, you know, that is what he's perfected over the decades. You know, the soundbite, the speaking to the crowd, all of that. You know, begrudgingly I have to go like, he can do this again on another station. He can do it himself. He can pack his station or his media institution with the crew that he's comfortable with, and they can keep pushing this kind of stuff, because, as you say, there's a large population out there who's been weaned on it for a while, right? And they're going to miss it.
I think what we have to bring it back to elections, just one very last comment about media. I think what we have to live with here is something we talked about when we talked about journalism in that episode. You know, when I talked about how until the 1920s, newspapers, publications were partisan, right? Every political party had their newspaper.
Yeah.
The communists said, you know, the Labour Party in Germany still have Vorwärts. That's like their party newspaper that you get when you're a party member. That used to be a newspaper. That used to be like the FAZ or the Zeit. That used to be published every week. And, you know, FAZ published every day. But that used to be the case. And then in the 50s and 60s, we got this idea. And John C. Dvorak goes on about this a lot. That's, kind of his media theory, alumni tech journalist that I like to listen to. And we had these J schools, right? And we had this idea that journalism needs to be objective. And Dvorak says that's been a lie from the start. And I think he's right. I think we had that. We had this this proposed objectivism, but people were still as partisan as they were before. Now, the problem we have now is we've taught generations of readers and listeners and viewers that we have this unpartisan, unbiased journalism when it actually don't exist. I think we need to go back to the time when we just see that every publication is partisan, right? And you have Fox News, and they are partisan in one way. You have MSNBC, where you have 3 former CIA high-level officials who are commentators now on TV for MSN, as Greenwald. We're going to talk
Spy
about
pundits.
Greenwald in a bit. Yeah, the people who institute the very security state, that so many people hate. They're now pundits on intelligence matters, and you're like, what? But I think we need to get used to that, and what we need to do badly is retrain the audiences, because we're not going to change that situation. That situation is going to stay. We need to retrain audiences to understand that this is the case and to deal with this. And I think one thing, that's my last point about the media and the election, one thing the American system needs to change badly is this calling the election bullshit, where the press calls the election, is dangerous. I don't know why they do that. We don't do that in Germany.
I wasn't actually aware that there was this kind of honor system nearly of. So everybody's sitting there looking at the Associated Press. They have a decision desk of mathematicians, statisticians, editorial people, and so on. And then they make a decision going, okay, everything statistically, blah, blah, blah. Now, it's beyond, statistically, it's unlikely that this is going to change or whatever. And then they decide, okay, we can call it. But there's still, it's not scientific, or it's, I don't know. I'm with you on that it's,
I understand. I don't understand it. I just object to the calling it, right? So in Germany, it goes like this. A polling booth close, then we have projections, and later on, there's, I don't know, the first thing is just basically based on exit polls. And then they base their projections on actual ballots counted, right? And they continue that throughout the night, the next morning, how long it takes. Sometimes it takes 2 days until all the elections, all the things are counted, whatever. But there's nobody in the media saying we're calling the election. What they're saying is, it looks from all projections, it looks like, I don't know, Angela Merkel has won. And we are awaiting the official word from the, it's the government. It's not even the government. It's like I think it's a commission installed by the parliament, right? They're the ones who count the votes. They need to tally the votes, and then they say we have an official result. Mm-hmm. And until this official result is there's nobody going, oh, I'm the office of the president-elect, right?
Yeah, but again, it's all this what's it called? Tradition, right? It's tradition.
Yeah.
And
here's a conservative like chiming in saying we need to get rid of this tradition because it's dangerous.
Yeah. Oh, that's another thing. Actually, I'm sorry to do a completely different, but you call yourself conservative, sort of recently, Fab, and I've been curious to know what actually makes you conservative, because so far I've sort of heard classical sort of liberalism here.
I think I'm. I don't know. I call myself half jokingly conservative because that's what people have called me. I think in the sense of the US, I would probably be a libertarian. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think in the German system, I'm tending conservative, because in Germany we have Labour Party, we have people left of the Labour Party, we have the conservatives, and then we have people right of the conservatives, and then we have the FDP, das Freie Demokraten, so they're called the liberals. And I hate them because to me a liberal is somebody who is about freedom of choice. And they're about freedom of choice for corporations, right? So they're like an economic party. But to me a liberal is about the freedom of choice of the citizen. But so I can't call myself...
Are you sort of a classical Socialdemokrat?
I used to be. But I'm not anymore, because as social democracy, Sozialdemokratie has evolved in Germany. I can't, I don't see myself aligning with their policies anymore. I feel like I feel like my focus, as you analyzed on the show, and I've been reflecting on ever since, is kind of like personal freedom. But I feel like with modern with policies that are becoming important now, things like the pandemic, right? Things like climate change. I tend to be a conservative in these regards, where my default position is we have a good life here in Germany. I'm taking this specifically to Germany now. We have a good life. We have a very good state. We have good laws in general. There's always some stuff that annoys you. That's always the same. But in general, we're doing really well. And to change things, you need a good reason. That's my default position, right? Because we're in a good position. We're in a good, I don't want to overthrow things because everything's good, relatively speaking. I think to change things, you need a good reason. And I feel like that is the conservative approach,
Well, you're conservative in a literal sense, probably, then, yeah. Because I would argue that modern conservatism, continental and in the UK, Ireland, seems more like rolling back personal freedoms in some cases to a glorious past where things were simpler and a little bit more.
I think that is a specifically
black and
UK, maybe the islands. I would, probably Ireland is influenced by that. I think that is an island because in Germany that doesn't exist because we don't have a glorious past. Quite literally.
Yeah. Fair enough. And you've been there, got the T-shirt, and you're not really interested in repeating that particular incident.
What we're saying right now, so earlier today, I was watching them passing this new lockdown law, and we have a great coalition of conservatives and Labour Party.
Yeah,
and they've today. I think the voting wasn't finished when we started this interview. I'm pretty sure this law is done and in the books. This is the law that curtails. Is unprecedented in the history of our country. Never has one law curtailed 6 personal freedoms quite widely in one go. So they're all I don't know. That's the problem with these labels. We talked about these labels before as well. Conservative, progressive. I'm quite progressive in some regards.
Yeah, and that's why I'm just I can't. It just clashes in my head when you call yourself a conservative. But
yeah, but I'm not a Tory.
Sure
let's put it that way.
Say, right? Because you're not socially conservative. You are it's again this kind of you're very sort of straight-laced on freedom and personal liberty, which could be taken in by a lot of different political parties, actually.
Yeah, it is being right now. I mean, my big problem with this law being passed in the Bundestag today is that from the face value, from what people were saying in the speeches before this was voted on, the party that mostly aligns with that is the AfD, which is kind of like our UKIP, anti-European, anti-immigrant party, which some are calling Nazis, which is I reject because that's a quite specific label, especially in Germany. But on face value, but I think everything like that just went out the window just now. I don't know. I also don't think I'm socially progressive anymore because I think I used to be, but just there are new ideas coming in. It's all the Zoomers. I don't know what's going on.
Institutionally conservative, maybe you want to protect the rights and freedoms of.
So I think I think the German experience shows you. It's the thing I named this episode. Picard saying, "With the first link, the chain is forged." The German, the way Hitler came to power in Germany was not like it's often simplified. It was not a seizing of power. It was not a quick thing.
It was a shock. It wasn't shock and awe. It was little
eroding
pushes over. Yeah,
eroding democracy and people's freedoms over 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
In a situation that is quite similar to the one we're having now, in a situation of economic troubles, of people actually really suffering. Back then, it was the Great Depression, and the pressure Germany was under after World War I. From all those reparations and stuff like that, and that is what I'm afraid of. And I think everything else, to me, I've come to understand in my old age now that everything for me, everything flows from that. If we do not have these personal freedoms guaranteed, in whatever situation we find ourselves in, then everything else is out the window. Because I used to think that the press, initially when I was a kid, I wanted to become a journalist because I used to think that the mission of the press was to tell what's true or what people see as true. And I don't see that anymore. I think the press is specifically becoming very, very partisan. And I mean, yes, we have a democratic system that works in Germany, but that doesn't help you if you have a grand coalition, right? If you have no meaningful opposition. There's no meaningful opposition to this law in the Bundestag. It's been shown to the public and passed in the span of less than 2 weeks, against the people who drafted this law had a legal specialist look over this. They said this law is haphazard. It's not written well. It has orthographic spelling mistakes in there.
Any law that's been rammed through in 2 weeks, no matter what it's about, if it's about the height of bicycle frames or your personal liberty, the 2 weeks is just it's not gonna be good.
So I feel our big problem. So I don't feel like it's kind of like in the US. I don't think they should change generally how their presidential election works, right? I think that some things in the process we talked about need to be changed, but generally I'm a fan of sticking to, in the case of the US, a system that's worked for 200 and I can't even more than 200 years. I feel that's generally a good idea, but I don't know. Public perception of this is obviously changing as well.
Okay, so we got your political standpoint sort of a little bit better explained. So that's what you mean when you say you're a little bit conservative. What do you think? If we say is Glenn Greenwald then the guy to pull the media out of this kind of partisan slump that it's fallen into? Is he the hero we're waiting for?
No, I don't think he is. I sent you this, so I'm going to put this in the show notes as well. So Glenn Greenwald's now on Substack because he quit at The Intercept. And he wrote this story about, he wrote about why he quit The Intercept, which was basically he wrote an opinion piece about the Hunter Biden laptop and was pretty much not allowed to publish it on The Intercept, even though he had contractual. I mean, he's a
co-founder. Or he was a co-founder. Yeah.
So he had a contract that if they weren't going to accept this stuff, it was in his contract that he could publish it somewhere else. But they tried to pressure him to not do that either. So he said, I've had it. I've had enough problems. It's enough. I find this quite interesting because I was never a big fan of Glenn Greenwald. I criticized him pretty early on in the Snowden revelations. I back in the day, I thought it was a mistake to give this kind of stuff to a journalist or a group of journalists. I thought the WikiLeaks reveal would have been better. I still believe that to some amount. I don't think they handled these revelations particularly well. But I've started reading his Substack because he got off because of the Intercept thing.
He left in a huff from the Intercept, right?
I feel just agreeing with him again and again. And his what he's saying is basically that the media he was in contact with and that he was part of decided to suppress this laptop story. And I think he's right. And I think this was obviously, what do you call that, opposition? We talked about this last time, right?
My view after having looked at what has been presented, it's a fabrication. It's really hard getting any kind of meaningful facts out of the story that serves what the Republican Party wants it to serve. Like it's really not.
Okay, I don't think it's it's not been released. I mean, this is one of the problems of giving stuff like this only to a few journalists. But I mean, I haven't read a single good argument for why this wouldn't be real. There are.
Okay.
I mean, no, seriously. I mean, there's well-known journalists who have said they looked at this. They know people that looked at this. Greenwald is one of them. That says nobody refutes that this is the real deal. What we don't know, as far as I understand it, we don't know if it came from that repair shop. I don't want to know where it came from. I can't talk about where it came from.
No, but that's what I mean. That if this guy ended up with something like that, It definitely wasn't that Hunter Biden came into the shop and
no. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's obviously it's a
complete setup. Like
it's a setup. It's an op by the Republicans. An October surprise. It's completely set up to disrupt the election like a week or two before the election.
Yeah,
I'm not.
Oh, okay. Then we're kind of on the same page because. It's all the red lights are flashing like that. There's nothing sort of by the way, have you seen this? It's a complete.
I mean, yes, but what I'm saying is, it is the duty of the media to publish that stuff, and they have to preface that, and you have to editorialize it. And you have to say, probably not buying where it came from. This is obviously a political ploy by the Republican Party, whatever, by Rudy Giuliani, whoever you're going to blame, doesn't matter. Clear, that is clear. But we think to all our knowledge, the material is real and it is a story. I mean, you can't say that is not a story. If the things were reversed and the Democrats had dropped something about Donald Trump Jr., a laptop like this, the media, I mean, that's what Greenwald is saying, and he's right. The media would have been all over that. Nobody would have asked, where did this come from? I mean, do you really think they would have not? I mean, come on.
Well, the thing is, if it's quite clearly a trap, like, please open this lid, nothing will happen, we promise, and that there is precedent in this case where it's exactly the same playbook as 2016, where it's like, Russia, if you're listening, you can provide the stuff, and lo and behold, a couple of weeks later, then boom, there's the reveal, right? So if you have precedent and the playbook is being followed again to the nearly exact degree, wouldn't you? If you were a journalist that had got a little bit burned, going like, okay, we got played here,
I would publish that, because that's
whipped up the froth, right?
That's not your. The role of a journalist is to inform the public. It is not your role to decide what the public needs to know. The public needs to decide for themselves. You can't be a gatekeeper to information as a conscientious journalist. Your role is quite literally to check if, to best of your ability, if the information you're giving out is real. And then you can and you should editorialize what it comes from, what it means. All the stuff you said.
Let's say that what is it you're saying? There's 3 or 4 journalists that claim that they've seen the content of this stuff.
I mean, the Post obviously,
because I think this is the clinch, right? Because the information is not out there. Nobody has wanted to put it forward. There's a lot of froth around that there is a potential story here. So my counter argument is, wouldn't there be at least one journalist somewhere who wants the scoop? I would say so. If it really looks and smells like something that could.
That's why the Post, they did publish the story. They talked about it. They got the stuff. They published the story.
But what did they publish? What did they publish?
A story on what is allegedly in there. But, you don't publish the material.
In there, but they didn't actually publish. What you're saying is they should publish the content, right?
No, I'm not. That's not like, if you follow.
But you've just said that nobody should decide if information should be passed on or not. It should be passed on.
This is complicated. There's two two classes of thinking here. I personally, in my understanding of journalism, have another understanding of what I'm just giving here. What I'm giving you here is the established wisdom that you learn if you go to journalism school, which I never did, but I took courses and things like that. And this is what you're told. This is what the German press codex say you should do, right? You should not publish the information. This is what Greenwald did with the Snowden stuff. You publish select things to, like the Post did, redacted to show that you got material and that it's real, but you don't publish raw data that could hurt anybody else, right? And allegedly on this laptop there is, selfies of Hunter Biden having sex with other people, right? You wouldn't want to publish this kind of stuff. But you write a story about what's on there, and that's what the Post did. And that is what you're supposed to do. And then you don't give out your sources. And
which Post was it? The New York Post or the
New York Post? I think I can.
Yeah, New York Post is kind of
it's a tabloid.
It's a tabloid, yeah. Okay. So
this is why Giuliani gave that to them. I'm not saying their story is a good story, right?
Yes.
It's a story that got pulled off Twitter. When the Twitter, it's like New York Post, Hunter Biden. Wait, let me just do a search here.
So is the one Biden corruption claims all but confirmed with Hunter emails? Is that the?
I think it is. Let me just pull this up, and I can tell you by the. Oh God, I don't even find that. See, I'm getting censored here. No, I'm just joking.
Considerable personal risk. Computer shop owner.
I mean, I'm not saying this is a good story. We're talking about the tabloid, right? But I'm saying they did within their means as a tabloid. They generally did what a journalist would do at this point. And see, this is why that's what I mean when I'm not a fan of Greenwald and of this way of doing things that you learn in J school. I think we moved past that. I think we are in a different world. And I think definitely with the Snowden stuff, I mean, what we've seen of that is it's PowerPoints from inside the NSA, right? There's no agent names on there, nothing like that. They could have clearly published that. With the Biden laptop, there might be stuff in there that, I don't know, cast aspersions on his wider family or on people who are completely unrelated, and and that would be a danger. But I personally would actually lead to releasing that stuff, or at least releasing more of that stuff, redacting it, releasing it, But it's not in the what I meant by it's the role of the media is not you shouldn't go and say like this shouldn't come out 2 weeks before the election, and that's why we're not writing anything on this, or just writing very marginal stories. And it's like that's what the New York Times did. I can tell you they had an editorial meeting where what's going to be the front page story today. And somebody said, there's this laptop story, and they said, no, we're not putting that on the front page. And it would have been a front page story. This is a front page story.
And I'm just reading here now. Blah, blah. So okay,
allegedly,
yeah. So there's some Chinese and Russian money allegations in here.
So allegedly it confirms.
But there's I can't see anything that's actual, like here is an email. They say they've seen emails. There are in the original story, which I can't currently find on my Google thing. I don't know where, but I would have to search. There were screenshots of emails. They were heavily redacted. And see, I'm not quite sure if you would even. I don't know. I would want to see it as well. I'm just saying Greenwald is right. Why wasn't this reported on widely? Even if you think it's crap, it's still a front page story. Even if you think this is all made up, that's a front page story. No, but then that became the story, right? The story became that nobody wanted to touch it because it was so sketchy. So it kind of backfired a bit, right? That the Post decided, okay, we're going to do this. And then everybody else went like, "Ooh, this stinks,"
Yeah, but if if you're saying it's it's sketchy, it would be, what you're asking there is it sketchy that this is real, or is it made up? As a journalist, you don't care where the information came from or how it got to you. That's not the point. The point is.
No, but don't you have to analyze if it checks out? You have to do like source verification or like.
No, you can't. If I get a tip from an anonymous whistleblower over like over a drop, secure drop, right? I can't verify where that came. But what
I mean, the contents. Then
what I'm trying to do is, are the contents real? Right. I'm trying to, if it's from a company or whatever, I'll try to figure out. Yeah, sure. I need to verify the is the actual material I'm getting factual, right? Is that made up? Is it real? Is it slanted? That's what I need to do. And I'm not seeing people writing about this material and saying, well, this doesn't seem real. Like, these photos don't seem real. These emails don't seem real. That's not what they're saying. They're all saying, well, it dropped at the wrong time, or it came from Rudy Giuliani.
Let's see. So one of the reporters on the story, Emma Jo Morris, worked for Fox News' Sean Hannity. Okay. It's Bruce Golding, veteran New York Post reporter, refused to have his byline on the original Hunter Biden story, even though he wrote large parts of it because of concerns over the article's credibility. Let's see here.
But I also, like, we can go into detail about this thing, but we haven't prepared that, so I don't think what I'm saying is Greenwald is completely right that it's bad journalism that this wasn't reported. And he is doubly right that he found it. So he got pissed off with The Guardian how they handled the Snowden revelations. He got pissed off with his editors and upper management telling him he shouldn't publish certain things. To which he said, no, it's my duty, the public must see this. And he got hampered. So he founded his own media organization for not this to happen again. And then he had his own editor-in-chief, who he hired at some time, presumably, tell him he shouldn't write about this. And he thinks, and I think he's right, but that's something you definitely can't prove. He says basically that editorial team was leading Biden, and they didn't, in Biden's direction, they published a lot of pro-Biden, anti-Trump stories on The Intercept, and they didn't want him to write about this because it could hurt Biden's chances, which I think is true. It would have. I don't know if it would have, influenced the election in a meaningful way, but I think it's a scandal that journalists have not written about this stuff. That journalists presume they get to decide what the public sees. That is not your job as a journalist. And if you, and I completely agree. If you're Sean Hannity and you're on Fox and you're just reading stuff off a prompter, then you're not a journalist. Yes.
Yeah, so all of the people involved in the story have links to either directly the Trump camp for the campaign, or have come from, let's say Republican-friendly news outlets, right? So everything from there on, you have to go, okay, this is clearly. They're bringing it forward to this, so we have to state that this is the background for the information.
I understand what you're doing.
And I think the big media organization that didn't want to touch this was because they couldn't independently verify what was being alleged or said there, because they didn't have access to this hard drive. Completely true. I understand that. Those are good arguments. What you're doing is also good media analysis that every reader should do. But Greenwald has a killer argument as a journalist, and I'm just going to repeat this. When the Biden campaign was asked, is the stuff on this laptop real or not? They did not categorically deny that. Never. At no point did they categorically deny that. So
how can that be? If it's not real, why didn't they deny it? There is no that as a journalist, this is when all your bells go. When you have a whistleblower and you don't know something's real, you do research, and then you ask, the company in question, right? Whoever is in charge, and you ask them, if this is real, right? If they deny it, you probably go on researching the story anyway. But at the moment where they don't categorically deny this, I mean, all your spidey senses must be tingling.
And what is it that is of interest? There's some business sleaze about corruption, and then
about why he was on certain boards.
What about his sexual adventures and that kind of stuff? What was?
I don't know that. I don't think that is part of the story. I don't think that should be part of the story. I don't.
Yeah.
If he likes to sleep with a lot of women, I don't care. I don't. That true. Mm-hmm. That shouldn't be part of the story. But the stuff that supports allegations that he was put on Burisma's board because he was connected to his dad, that there was corruption going on in Ukraine under the Biden, under the Obama-Biden administration, that the Biden family is very friendly to China, that Hunter Biden got jobs with China or got money from Chinese companies to influence his father. Those are all valid allegations. I don't know if they're true, but it's a story. It's a definite story. We have a outgoing US president who made 4 years of trade war against China and pissed the Chinese off very much. And we have an incoming president who's probably quite friendly and possibly connected to corruption. I don't know, but it's a story.
So what if intelligence people who are interviewed about whether or not this looks legit or whatever, and they say, well, it looks like Russian disinformation to me. Well, would you write that then?
No, I mean, yes. I mean, the problem there is
Joe Biden has said that he's never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings, and the meeting with blah, blah, blah never took place. Hunter Biden has admitted that it was poor judgment to sit on the company's board while his father was in the White House, but he has done nothing wrong.
Yeah, it could all be true. Could all be true. I mean,
neither Hunter or Biden campaign has spoken about whether the laptop would even belong to Hunter. Blah, blah, blah.
That's the point.
We have no idea where this came from, and certainly cannot credit anything that Rudy Giuliani provided to the New York Post. Yeah, so I don't think they're saying no, this laptop doesn't exist, but they're saying, I think it's more like going, we don't understand this story. We don't. We have no idea.
Do some fucking research to understand the story. But I don't think they've even tried.
If it's a complete fabrication, because that's what Giuliani has been doing for a long time, is to try and get somebody to help him frame Hunter Biden. So some of it is complete la la land storytelling that has no relation to reality. So I think it's fair enough to say that.
That could be true. My question is, why hasn't Biden denied it categorically? Why hasn't Hunter Biden come out and said, this is not my laptop? At that point, the story is dead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to mince words with you on, if we have no idea where this came from,
to answer,
this is not my laptop. But if it's like, if he hasn't owned a laptop for years or something like that, and it's like, I can't remember if I had a laptop 10 years ago, or, is it that kind of thing we're in? It's.
Well, I mean, you could say that, yes, but I mean, hasn't said that either. But to answer your question with the intelligence, I have an issue with that as well. And I mean, I again agree with Greenwald, who's made a large part of his career since known to fight against what he calls the intelligence state. And I don't, there were a lot of high-ranking U.S. intelligence officials who wrote a letter that said this looks like Russian disinformation, but they said in that very letter that they have no proof or no hard evidence that this is Russian disinformation.
No, but neither has this laptop with the hard disk actually materialized anywhere. It's just It's just this kind of mirage that gets bound around.
No, it wouldn't.
Yeah, but why would it materialize? It hasn't.
Because you, as a journalist,
if forgotten about Hunter Biden,
no,
right? Everything is about how the election was stolen.
Some journalist at the Post got from a source. It doesn't matter if it's Rudy Giuliani.
Some journalist was phoned up by Rudy Giuliani and said, "I need some help with this." You know,
that's your theory. I'm trying to explain. I'm trying to answer your question why the laptop wouldn't turn up. Yeah, if I have a whistleblower, doesn't matter who it is, who gives me information, it's a laptop, it's not thumb drive, some emails, doesn't matter. It's my sacred duty. I go so far. Like the German press codex is very clear on this. To protect my source, I'm never giving that out. I'm never giving that to anybody. I mean, you know, Greenwald hasn't given the Snowden archive to the public or to anybody else. Like there were specific people Snowden trusted with this information and with the archive, and nobody else. I mean, okay, they had some collaboration and stuff, but you know, that wasn't widely disseminated either. That's just not done. That's not what you do. You need this is basic source protection. You open yourself up to all kinds of legal problems. So if I give that to somebody, right, and they make a story, and somebody else who's not connected to this, who was on the laptop, who has a picture with Hunter or whatever, and gets fired, and they sue me, or you know, they sue that, then that's my fault, right? You can't just hand that out. That's why the laptop hasn't turned up. I'm pretty sure.
But I would wager here as well that, you know, there is a bit of karma here as well, because if that's the way we say things have to be, then the Republicans clearly enjoyed the fruits of their labor in 2016 with her emails, right? And looking back at it the way, like, okay, it was definitely information provided to them by whoever, you know, let's not go into who provided it to them, all that, and they were genuine. It was hacked from the DNC servers, right? So there was, what was it, 30,000 emails or something with all sorts of stuff. So there was genuine material there that got released, and that was through WikiLeaks, right?
Yeah. Fine.
Yeah. So why couldn't they do the same thing now? Put a few bits and bobs into WikiLeaks.
They could. I'm not sure. I don't know.
Or something similar. I don't know. Does WikiLeaks actually still operate? Or
yeah, they do operate. I don't know if they would take it. I don't know who's in charge. Yes, you could definitely do something.
But why would they take it back in 2016 then? If they wouldn't take it now?
Because a lot of stuff has happened to WikiLeaks since then, and to to Assange, who's still sitting in some in some jail
somewhere. Okay, but there's no shortage of other places where
I completely agree. This is why I say I prefer information like this generally to be out there. I completely agree. Yeah. I mean, so also I don't want to. My point again is not to reflect on the story, on how. I don't want to decide if this is all true. That's not my point. My point is conduct of the media. And we can't trust, if journalists behave like this, we can't trust them anymore. We can't trust them to be our source for this kind of information.
But what if they feel burned a bit from 16, right? And they're going, okay, if this really is a story, we'll see a drop very soon. Because this is the playbook that Giuliani and the other merry people used before. So if this is, then we just hold back a little bit and then we'll see what happens. But no, nothing came.
Well, you have to
smoke and mirrors.
You have to get over that. I mean, yes, you're getting burnt. I mean, that's so as a journalist, right? Either you want to be a reporter and you just listen to C-SPAN or whatever, and write down, or go out in the street and do reporting, whatever. Or you want to be an investigative journalist and win a Pulitzer Prize. And if you want to do that, then you have to do chancy stories. Then you will get stuff on whistleblowers that you can't verify. And you'll get burned, yes. But you have to get over that.
Now, so you think this associate of Sean Hannity will win a Pulitzer for this?
No, definitely not. I mean, I agree with you. The fact that this comes from Giuliani, the fact how it was dropped, who it got, who wrote about it, this all points to this being a sketchy story. But I'm saying, on the other hand, I have no good argument at all that this material isn't real. So I have to assume it's real. And I don't have, it's made worse by the fact, yes, if it is a sketchy story, then especially we need the New York Times and the Washington Post and all those high-class journalists to go in there and research, to dig in the story. I mean, you might find the opposite, but they didn't do that.
What if the story is that actually Giuliani has been trying for months and months and months to try to get somebody in Ukraine to say a bad word that they can use?
Then you do some research on that, and you publish that if you got good evidence.
But then they did, and they said, okay, this laptop story just stinks of this Ukraine thing that Giuliani has been trying to cook up for months, and we're not going to touch it. That's what they wrote.
Yes, I know, but you can't do that. You can't do that. That's not what you can do it. Obviously, they did. Yeah. But that's bad journalism. That you don't judge the material you write stories on by who gave you the material or in what circumstances it got to you. This is rule number one. You learn that in you learn that everywhere. That is basic journalistic practice. Because if you do that, you're fucked. You will never get you always get leaked stuff like this because somebody has a grudge. And it's always slanted. Of course it's slanted. Somebody has a grudge. Somebody hates their boss. If you start discounting stuff like that, you will never get a scoop. Right? I mean, if somebody comes to me and says, okay, I've got something about, I don't know, let's pick a random company, VW, right? And I've got here just all these scandals going on inside of VW. Like, why would they do that? They obviously have an axe to grind. They don't like somebody working there. They got fired. They hate the company. All these whistleblowers that told us all this stuff about Boeing manufacturing. They were all shunned employees and fired. And if you go, well, I can't trust this guy because he obviously got fired.
Yeah. No, but I think I'm just pushing you a bit here because
it's good. I like it.
It's a very high journalistic line that you're laying out because obviously people will use their experience, as you say, to look at what it is they're getting in, right? And you think if you had been in a similar position, you think your spider sense would have been tingling. And you would have felt like you had a bit of scoop in your hands, while people who are in the environment in the U.S. and the political environment in the U.S., 1 out of 100 decided to do something about it, and strangely enough, they're quite connected to people who are entangled with the Trump campaign,
because right? It's all slanted. As I said before, it's there on the other end. Sure,
but. Your point still stands, of course, that Glenn Greenwald did, for better or for worse, want to write about this, and he got kiboshed by editors in his own information organ that was set up to not have stuff like that happen. So it's very unfortunate. So of course he should go to Substack or somewhere like that if he believes that that's where he can operate to the level that he wants. But I do want to say that from having read into it, I didn't know Glenn Greenwald very well before we started talking about him. I must admit, because around Snowden and all that, I actually wasn't that sort of into political reporting and security matters and stuff like that, which is only sort of the last few years. So reading into it, I can also see a man who is a little bit complex, maybe has doubled down a bit on.
Oh yeah, definitely. Sure.
On stuff, and I think he's maybe gone a little bit into the red there on pursuing this to the nth degree, right? Because at a certain point you have to move on from this and go, okay, I took my stand here. I still have my morals in place, because he does seem like a man that has a moral compass, right? I mean, he doesn't seem like a hitman. He's not a hack, I think, as far as I can see.
No, he's he used to be a lawyer, writing about, I think, so he's a lawyer. He started a personal blog on the Bush, Cheney, all the security laws that came in after 9/11.
The Patriot Act and all that.
Stuff like that, yes. And then he was picked up as a columnist by The Guardian. And later, or I think before that, I don't know, New Yorker? Yeah. I don't know. But he ended up as a columnist at The Guardian. So you also have to remember he's a columnist, right? He's not an investigative reporter.
And that's what I mean, that I can see he has form for being opinionated on a good basis and investigative, in the sense that he wants to, as you say, report on things that he has found. But I think lately, from what I can see, that the way he doubles down on this, he's very bitter about what happened to him, I think, with The Intercept. And then he's also now then ramping up on just wanting to prove that he had something with this, and really, really going strongly after the Democratic Party and how they're hypocrites. And there's definitely a lot of relevant points there that he keeps bringing up. But I just don't like the way that there is a bit of bitterness and a bit of revenge here that creeps in from what happened to him with the Hunter Biden email story. And I think you have to be careful, right? That's he's becoming zealous, I think, a little bit overzealous.
Yeah, but I mean, I think to some degree he has always been that. So what I've read him for a large, what I've always found interesting is he's obvious zealous against what he calls the security state. Ever since the Snowden stuff, he's been or probably before that. I mean, I guess it goes back to the Patriot Act. He's very critical of what other journalists, and I hate this phrase, it's become like a red flag for me. Whenever I see that, I discount the writer almost immediately. When somebody says the intelligence community, right? There is this community in the US, so there's this mechanism where people who are spies, who lie, don't get this wrong, right? We were talking about lying earlier with Trump. Spies lie for a living. That's their whole job. They never tell you the truth. So these people are professional liars, quite literally, quit like the CIA, and then they become political pundits, right? And people who under Bush and under Cheney were responsible for the worst laws in the history of the American Republic when it comes to personal freedom, now have like news shows on CNN or something. And he fights against that, and I respect him for that. And that's something that's why I brought up Greenwald. It's not so much about the Hunter Biden thing. I mean, for me, that's gone. I mean, for me, that's just a symptom of how the media works over there, or generally.
No, but the thing I wanted to sort of get to with that was that, yes, journalists have to be sort of what is presented to me, how to analyze it, and so on. But my reading of it is, as I just explained, that he seems to have gone down a path now where it is a bit of a revenge crusade there, because
very personal.
It's very personal. And the thing I don't understand is, if he doesn't like infringement on your personal freedoms, doesn't like the way the security state and all that, he needs to keep going against all players in the arena then in the US, because the Republicans are not little lambs in this sense.
No.
So I feel that he's doing himself a disservice there with going like that he really wants this track to vindicate him at some point, right? Going after the Bidens. And that's just the flip side of how you've said that, Trump has been in the crosshairs for the last 4, 5, 6 years, right? And you're completely right. A lot of that flack he has wittingly or unwittingly brought on himself. And here we now have a journalist who
does the opposite.
Who does the opposite, right? That from my reading of his background, he would be chewing on Donald Trump at the moment, right? But he's decided that the Bidens are the ones to go to, right? So
I don't. To be honest, I don't personally think that. But more generally, because I don't think Trump. has many problems, and I agree with you on that. But he is not a proponent of this security state. Biden and his, the Obama administration were much worse offenders in that respect. So I don't think Greenwald would be. But I agree with you. He has a one-track mind now. He does that. Maybe that'll go away at some point. But I think also he has embraced this what I said earlier, that we are throwing this objective journalism out the window. We're now saying this is my publication, and the next step is not, this is the New York Times. The next step is who I am personally, right? As a writer, this is my publication, this is my Substack, this is what I'm writing about, and this is my slant. And I always try, for example, I think this is true. I try to give people my slant. I've started I moved my newsletter to Substack, right? And I put in the description, I put conservative politics, because I think that's what people, expect. I mean, what people expect when I write that is probably what they will be getting. Like, that's one part of it. It's going to be tech news. It's going to be, media criticism, and it's going to be conservative politics.
Yeah, I think as a tip, at least, because you can hear from I've been thinking about this, right? Because you're my friend, and it didn't add up for me, right? But it kind of does now, because when you say conservative, it'll mean a lot of things to different people.
I have to think about that term.
You probably have to. I understood. Chop it up a bit.
Yeah, I understood your earlier point. I understood that. Yeah. I'll think about that. It's not finished. I mean, I'm still working on the description of the newsletter.
If there's any conservative listeners, it's not that I find that you're bad people. It's just conservative means a lot of things.
I know where you're coming from. But what I actually wanted to mean is that we're moving to a point where we're moving to people being openly biased and being more transparent with their leanings, their political leanings, when they write about stuff. And I think generally that's going to be good. We need to get rid of this publications are objectives. It's clearly not true. And you asked in the beginning if you thought like Greenwald was the was the savior here, and I think he isn't. I'm currently writing a newsletter entry about Substack, and about how people have said that is like the savior. I don't think it is either, but I see two directions that maybe are happening right now in media that I think will make things better. And those two are, and I've talked about this, the first one on this podcast, I believe the only way forward for consensus journalism is for content creators, writers, filmmakers, whatever, to be directly paid by their audience and to not be advertising supported. I think that's very important, and certainly that's Substack is kind of like Patreon is another approach. And I think it will come down to personalities and you knowing their background and you're following certain personalities, not the monolithic New York Times, right? Where like, oh, they're a bastion of journalism, they're objective. No, it'll be more about this writer and that writer. And I think that is also the only way to go. Because, I mean, this distrust in media will get worse. And the distrust is because if you have half a brain and you read people, you know that this writer at the publication has a different opinion than that writer, right? And this artificial corset of conforming everybody in this, we're all the New York Times or the Washington Post, or I don't know. In my case, it was Heise, right? You're all Heise. It doesn't work. It and people noticed. They noticed that it's a fabrication.
Yeah, it's definitely let's say for some people, what would you call it? A bit of a delusion, right? That they kind of wrap themselves going like, I say I'm objective, therefore I am objective, right? And as we've talked about in previous episodes, it's practically impossible, right? Because we will all have our backgrounds and opinions and so on, and I think the important part is if you're gonna have let's take the New York Times, that you don't like their current way of doing stuff, right? So how would that change, right? How would you respect the New York Times again? Not necessarily agree with them, but how would you come to respect them again? Is it that they have to make an editorial that's always present, going like, this is what we think about blah blah blah, something, this is our stance on the big things in modern society, or and this is our editorial policy? Would they need to have sort of a editorial disclaimer somewhere that's clearly visible and going, this is where we're coming from, or is that what you're looking for?
I think they should have done with to defend Heise here, who I used to work for, which Heise has always tried and has worked for them in some respects, is what you need to do is you need to make clear who's writing what, right? So you in my opinion, make the byline very prominent. And it's easier on the reader if you put a picture with that as well. So you know who's writing what. And then you just need to have a pluralism of opinion. If if I read a monolithic newspaper on the web or as print, doesn't matter, I want them to have all opinions, right? If there's the huge divisive issue in US politics, which until now, or even still, is like Trump versus Biden, I want to see voices from both camps, right? And I want to see editorial wars. I want to see the Democrat guy go, Trump is, I think he's a criminal, and this is why. And then the Republican columnist goes, you're full of shit, and here's why. Don't try to have an editorial line, right? The newspaper have an editor. I mean, yes, you will always have that because there's a certain culture, but try to give everybody a voice and not suppress them. And often, I mean, I make it sound like a conspiracy theory. It's not like that. It's more like, and Greenwald has written about this, and Taibbi and other people. They tend to be both on, they're not both on Substack, but many journalists who've quit jobs have written about this. It's not overt pressure. It's not like, oh, you're only writing pro-Biden stories. It's like an office environment. It's like a culture. You realize that you're working with people and there's a certain culture and a certain feeling. And if you don't agree with that, you end up being shunned, right? People are like, oh, who's that crazy guy? He has a different political opinion of us. And you're like, you're subtly discouraged to writing certain things because other people don't approve. And you're an employee. You're like, you won't. Even as a journalist, if you're an employee, you want to make your boss happy, because you want to keep your job.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just it would be great to see examples of that really work. I can't think of a newspaper or news organization that really does that. I've listened a bit to what's called LBC in the UK, which is sort of one of these radio stations where they've had on, like, they have James O'Brien on, who is a very sort of left-wing commentator, and then they've had people like Farage have his own, like Nigel Farage have his own radio show on the same station, right? In theory that works, but my experience of that is that they're just these little silos sitting under the same roof. But as you say, it's not that James O'Brien, he goes into Farage and then they have a discussion. It's basically just megaphone monologues with callers calling in, and then usually the people who call in either are completely rabid, negative, want to slant them, or they're fanboys, right? And that doesn't really
so they should
anything,
should go on the show, like I mean, Der Spiegel did this for a while. They had Augstein, who's the son of the old school publisher, who is left leaning. And then they had a right-leaning Fleischhauer guy, and they would write columns back and forth. And then at some point they did a podcast where they they just discussed, and that one very famous podcast episode where I love this. They teased this on social media with Augstein shouts at Fleischhauer. They were literally just shouting at each other. You're a dumb leftist. You have no idea what you. And it was great. I mean, this is great, and it's good stuff. I don't know why they stopped doing. I think you need people who can stomach this kind of stuff, right? And you'd have to, I don't know. I think Nigel Farage strikes me as someone who could stomach it, but you need somebody who can stomach being in a room with Farage as well.
Oh, but yeah, and that's a whole other. Let's not go there. My blood pressure will.
I feel like we can do that, and but I'm not sure. I don't think what I'm describing here, what I think will save. I won't save, but yeah, I think we'll make it better. I'm not sure. All current audiences. Oh, somebody's at the door, but the wife is sorting it out, so that's good. Somebody's picking up the packages we've collected. I'm like the post office for the building because I'm downstairs and I'm always there.
Oh, very good.
But I don't think audiences that are growing up to be like the new audiences necessarily maybe want that. I don't know. I feel like a lot of people don't have a problem with the way it's like. Certainly in Germany, I'm baffled. Like I'm completely baffled in Germany because I understand this divisive nature in the US, and it's their country and it's their president, right? So you're very emotional about this, and you're very partisan, and I understand all of that. But the same thing is in Germany. Like the German journalists write about, oh my God, for 4 years they were, what Trump has done, and this is so bad for the people in Minnesota, right? And I was sitting there like, seriously, who cares?
Yeah,
I'm not in Minnesota. Like, why? Like, and the audiences, but they still want that. I don't get it. They want to be angry at Trump, even though it's hardly relevant for us here.
Yeah, and as we said earlier, it's a dangerous drug, right? Because you might just get what you're wishing for. That he'll continue even after leaving office with this kind of shouting from the sidelines, right? And providing the Trump orange Hitler drug that some people seem to want so much of. But yeah, maybe we should move to like what's ahead, right? Because I think you said a great thing there. What does it actually matter for people? And I think I read a great thing there, and I hope they're in the show notes somewhere. It's basically it's a guy writing about how he traveled across the states, especially I think it was the Rust Belt and those areas, and really went in and talked to people who were classified as classic Republican voters, but actually there are some signs that it's not that easy just to go, okay, these people were they were looking for somebody to give them a job, and they were disillusioned with the status quo and so on. And he does say that it's a bit more complicated picture than that. It doesn't necessarily mean that that this sort of typical Trump voter does exist all the time. There was actually still quite a few people who now sort of tack their hopes on Biden, to give them something to look forward to. But they also know it's maybe a short-sighted strategy from their side, because he is kind of a status quo candidate, isn't he? Yeah, Biden. So it is very uncertain for people who are looking at mass unemployment, shutdown of industry and so on. That I think was part of the story in 2016. I think, yeah. So the work ahead is it is mixed, I think, with this type of person who's maybe the MAGA hats and all that. There might be a bit more of a layer of complexities sometimes to those areas that got panned like that, and the Democrats will have to sort of work towards a strategy there that can pay off for them in years to come. It's not gonna.
I'm not sure that's like the important. Like my biggest worry right now, my concern with Biden is that, in the pandemic situation we're on right now, Trump was, let's say, in the Western world, the last holdout of a government official who was openly skeptic and I nearly said conservative, but I mean like subdued on the. He wasn't all in with the measures, right? With the lockdown and the stuff, and I mean now, the world is looking to the U.S. in a large part on to how to handle this stuff, and I feel we, I'm quite critical of some of these measures, especially because of just the curtailing of civil liberties that goes with them, and I think Biden will push these to extent that Trump wouldn't have done. I'm pretty sure he's going to try to put in a universal mask mandate in the U.S. and I'm just worried in that it's a done deal now, right? Everybody now agrees that this is what we have to be done. Like civil liberties are just completely not as important as perceived, as I would call it, perceived safety, from getting infected. And I don't know.
I mean, they need to do something, I think, in order to balance, because just letting rip as well, I don't think is a viable strategy, because your infrastructure to deal with sort of medium to high impact cases will suffer greatly, right? And obviously the US as well, there's no universal health care.
Well, so my big criticism of this law that they just presumably, I'd have to look at the news now, but presumably just passed in Germany, is that they have all these measures that curtail personal freedoms, and they say this is because we need to protect the medical system, right? Our healthcare system. We need to protect that. We can't get too many people with COVID to get in the ICUs, because then the ICUs are full, and if you have a motorcycle accident, then they can't help you. I buy that argument. I buy that goal. But if that is the goal, why do you publish a law revision that's 17 pages long that only talks about curtailing personal freedoms? And why don't you have a law about the healthcare system? Right? Why don't we get more hospitals? Why are we not paying? We have the problem that we don't have enough ICU nurses, right? Because they're not paid enough. Everybody knows this. They work too long. The doctors. Why are we not fixing that? Nobody's doing that. So this is kind of like my criticism, and I feel like Biden is on the same path. I don't feel like Biden is somebody who's going to go, okay, we need universal health care now, right? He's just going to say we need more lockdowns, we need more mask mandates, we need contact tracing, we need all this, we need testing. All that is bullshit. Those are like just stopgap measures we invented in March because we weren't prepared. But we've had since March to fix things. And we're not doing that. Okay. And I agree with, if you would say that Trump didn't do that either. True. Yes, he completely dropped the ball on that as well. Because I think he didn't take it seriously enough. But I feel like that is my one fear. And my other fear is that Biden is way too friendly with, what Greenwald calls the security state. I think there's people going to go back to the CIA, going back to the NSA, that are a problem, and I look with trepidation to this whole crypto wars discussion where they want to outlaw encryption for public use. I can totally see Biden go on board with that, because I could also have seen Trump going on board with that, but I just feel like Biden is very much part of this establishment because he was in the administration that did. No,
but he's a career politician. He's been there forever, and obviously that will have its own inertia, right? That's and at this point in time, that's what people voted for. They wanted to swing back to something that's not as let's call it unpredictable as a Trump presidency, right?
Yeah.
And now then the civil war will start in the Democratic Party on how much they should swing the other way. And I completely agree with that, I would like to see them much more progressive on something like this, a compassionate society, right? That lifts the living standard up for because what is in the US? They have is it over 100 million people that actually live on the breadline, like, or are classed as poor or something. It like it's staggering actually, the divide between like the people who are classed as poor and then middle class and upper class, that it's so sharp, I think, and it would just it would be part of, I think, moving the world forward if they were able actually to start, and of course the pandemic is, you shouldn't leverage something like that in a what should I call it, what would you call it when you're sort of using you're using something opportunistic. Yeah, that's maybe like being this kind of calculated, okay, there's a bit of misery here, let's exploit that.
Let a good crisis go to waste.
Never let a good crisis go to waste. But look, I know in the past, for example, you've not liked let's say Ocasio-Cortez, for example, the sort of young up and coming.
Still don't like her, but yes,
you still don't like. But I'm sorry to tell you that she is the future of the party.
Oh yeah, she definitely is.
That she is pushing dinosaurs like Biden and Pelosi and those fellas, and that's what you're gonna get if you wish for progression in the Democratic Party. Those are the ones that are lined up to do it. So you may have to swallow some camels at some point on what you think is good progression or not good progression.
I mean, I'm in no illusions. That's what I'm saying. I mean, she has the Zoomer voters on her side, and a large part of the millennials who I largely don't agree with their political position. Yeah, but that's gonna happen. Yeah, sure, definitely. But I feel like I'm not with you. I think it is totally okay to use this pandemic to change things. I think the things they're changing are idiotic. They're not based on science. They're not based on hard scientific evidence. They all say they love science, right? Yeah. And the Chicago mayor does some weird videos, PSA announcement where she says, I love science. Yeah, you have no fucking idea what science actually means. I mean, you guys have no fucking idea. And the problem is, that's what I'm saying. If they use this pandemic to fix the healthcare system, right? So just imagine all that money we're spending, we would actually put that into the healthcare system, right? And we would make the healthcare system resilient against this kind of disaster, right? And then we actually manage to get the virus, beat the pandemic, or war on the pandemic, or whatever they're calling it now, and then that's gone in 3 years, and we still have that healthcare system. How good would that healthcare system be?
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. And the thing is,
you'd have doctors that could actually sleep before they're operating on your open heart for 18 hours. That would be a bonus.
Yeah. No, I think there we're sort of looking towards the same thing there, right? That if you could get a compassionate society that is able to create infrastructure that can actually look after your 400 plus million inhabitants, because they're also in theory, over some time, 60 to 80% of the population would need to get the vaccine, right? Or one of the vaccines to kind of have a grip on,
if you wanted to actually
suppressing it.
Yeah, but the problem is you even with travel restrictions, probably have to happen worldwide.
But that's the thing. That's what the world is looking at, right? That's ideally over a period of time, if you could work your way through the most vulnerable to then the sort of larger part of the population, and get that level of immunity, then you've suppressed the virus, and it becomes this kind of...
Well, kind of, but the thing is also, we do not have any scientific knowledge about this.
No,
we don't know if this thing doesn't turn out to be influenza and mutates next year, and then we need a new vaccine, and then that bet's completely off.
Yeah. I do believe that's. I think that's what's going to happen. They'll just have to continue making this, and then we get a flu jab and we get a COVID jab every year, and that's.
Yeah, but if that happens, then we never beat the pandemic because we've never beaten the flu pandemic. So
no, but I don't think beating the pandemic. I think to me means that you are able to suppress it as we have suppressed and live with influenza.
Well,
because it's out there, like the virus is out there, like this is never going to be with us for decades.
Maybe, but not to the public, because the public doesn't understand that there's, in the US there's hundreds of thousands, between 60 and 150,000 people a year dying of influenza, and we just probably much more, right? If you actually did large-scale RT-PCR testing for influenza, you'd probably figure out how many people are actually dying of that. But that's...
Yeah, but I'd say just on the death levels, yes, that there's a discussion there. But you do also have long COVID, and it is a disease that attacks any kind of your organs.
I just had a discussion with somebody on Twitter about this yesterday. Yes, but so does influenza, and I don't know what the English word is, pneumococcus. That there are a lot of people who are vulnerable, who get influenza and get a lung inflammation, right? Pneumonia, and have lifelong problems of that. Just nobody fucking ever cared. This was just something, that happens. It's like heart attacks.
But I personally, from what I've seen, I think there's a slightly higher risk of having a long-term damaging.
See, we don't know that because we don't have any long-term.
Are we talking 0.05 to 0.01? But
I'm prepared to accept that. I'm completely prepared to accept that. The problem is just that our current measures are designed to beat. They want to beat. They want to flatten the curve. To whatever. What we need to do is we need to accept that this is a thing now. That it's probably not going to go away. That we can make it better, but that it's going to be there, and we need to fix our infrastructure to deal with it. And we need to accept that more people will die of this. Yes, we have a new disease introduced to the planet.
It's a new disease, so
it's very virulent. So yes, we'll have excess death. Yes, people will die. But we need to see that in perspective. And my problem is it's the same with this is not discussed in the media. This is not discussed in politics. I mean, So I'm watching today, right? I'm watching the Bundestag. I'm watching them talking about this law. And our health minister, who has been in office since this whole thing started, who in February said we need to be more, we need to be brave enough to close hospitals because we have too many hospitals and it's too expensive, right? That guy, still in office. Holds a speech for this law and says he basically starts with saying this is the biggest catastrophe we've ever seen, and he actually said it's Schicksalshaft, so it's destiny. He basically made it sound like, this is something that came down from God and we can't really do. And what he literally said, whatever we do, some people will die, right? And then he's like, and then they're passing a law where basically what it does is curtail civil liberties of people. This guy is shirking responsibility. He's the health minister. It's his fucking responsibility. He just can't say, this comes from God. No, it's your job to fix this. It's your job to prepare our healthcare system. You've had since at least March. What have you done?
Yeah.
Nothing. When the German healthcare workers, when everybody was clapping in the streets, and they were expecting a rise, you know what they got? I know some of these people, they literally got a chocolate bar and some Nivea skin cream. That's what they got from the state as thanks for caring for people. It's like they should have gotten a 50% raise, at least.
I think there's a lot of great things in there. That's the kind of political sea change that I would want to see as well, a society, because you can choose, like, I know it's not like you snap your fingers and then overnight you have a different, but there are choices that decide what kind of industry and infrastructure that you want in your country, and how you want to influence your friends and neighbors in other countries, and how you exchange knowledge and goods and things like that would enhance and complete these things. And if there was a political will to create a more compassionate society that focused on health and environment and so on, then you would be able to create it. Because look at this vaccine glut we have now. 3 vaccines within a year of this virus being reported for the first time, November last year. Within a year, we have reached the stage for 3 major vaccine trials. It's unbelievable.
And let's point out that our government has, they paid for that. But other than that, they're now patting themselves on the back. They've done nothing for the people who actually do the work. Right? Yeah. The people who stand in labs, who do PCRs all day, they're fucked. Don't get like in Germany, we have a law. So in Germany, you can't have employment contracts with a limit. Right? There's a law that says you can have a limited employment contract. Let's say I'll employ you for 6 months. Or I'll employ you for 12 months. With a time limit. You can only get 2 of them, I think. And then the third one, you automatically have an unlimited contract. That applies to every employee in Germany, except if you work in science. So if you are the guys who came up with this vaccine, right? My wife has been working in as a biologist since almost 15 years now, I guess. She's never had an unlimited contract. It's all like 3 months contracts that get, they're bound to like payments coming in, having study grant money and shit like that. That's something we need to fix if we want to have this shit happen. But
No, but the thing is, like,
you could do it. Yes.
The US decided that they wanted to put a man on the moon, right? And they did, and they expended trillions in today's money doing it. If you decide that you want to have universal healthcare for your population,
you
could do it. It's a political will, and that's what the voters out there who turned out in record-breaking numbers for this presidential election, if they start actually thinking about what they did this time, and both sides, right? Because yes, the Democrats got their candidate in the White House, but the Republicans also went, actually, we didn't get completely spewed with hate here. We actually got more voters than the last time. Both parties will be able to take something from this, and then you obviously work towards your policy agenda, right? And I hope for the Republican Party that they go, okay, that was a bit wild. I think we maybe need somebody who's a little bit more steady hand on the tiller here, so we can do our social conservative policies, if that's your thing. And for the Democrats, they should go, okay, we got our transition guy in. He's the plank from one side to the other of status quo politics to whatever future it is that they can agree on, right? But they need to agree on something, because, and this is what I've put in as well in the show notes, yes, Obama had 8 years where he inspired a lot of people, first black president, great talker. Obamacare was a good step on the road, but on the other hand, Obama just continued the American hegemony around the world and sort of didn't really tinker too much with the way that they voraciously run the oil industry. Signed up for a bit of environmental stuff, but no big splashes really, apart from a bit of war and Osama bin Laden and so on. But, that's my fear, that it sort of just falls back into that track, and there's a little bit of goodwill here and there and one or two policy changes, but they need structural change. They really do.
It will not come. You do see that this is the divide that's just going to continue.
It's behind this guy here. But I do want to say that, if we sort of circle back to Georgia here, where Georgia is now again in January really going to be on the map, because there's a runoff there for the last 2 seats in the Senate. There are 2 Democratic candidates and 2 Republican candidates. If the Democrats win both senatorial seats, it will be a tie in the Senate, and then Kamala Harris will have the deciding vote as the vice president. So if Joe Biden and company want to get anything done in his presidency, they need to get that tiebreaker. They need to get those 2 people in, John Ossoff, and I can't remember the other guy's name. So Georgia now will be, if they can do that, then they have a chance of doing some kind of meaningful policy. If not, then they're going to get hamstrung by the Grim Reaper, which is Mitch McConnell. And you know what? He actually likes that moniker. He likes it. Because do you know why he's called the Grim Reaper?
No.
Because he does not care what kind of legislation it is. If it's come from the Democratic Party, he destroys it. He kills it. Mitch McConnell has made it his life objective to just kill anything that has come from the Democratic side. He will not let it pass in the Senate, right? So he's rebelling. He's enjoying being called the Grim Reaper, right? And he'll continue to do that in Joe Biden's presidency as well. There's going to be very, very little bipartisan stuff going on, unless, of course, it's amenable to the Republicans. So everything hinges on this Georgia thing again. So we circle back to going like people like Stacy Abrams in Georgia. This will mean something, and they will have to continue doing this over the next 4 weeks, 5 weeks. They have to keep hammering the iron there, because if they don't get this, it's just 4 years of stalemate, and then we see what happens in 2024.
Yeah. Although maybe, I don't know. Now that you talked about Mitch McConnell, I just remembered Adam Schiff again, and I could just get...
No, okay, if you want to go there, I have actually sat down and I've thought about the few times we've clashed on Adam Schiff. So, and I did actually think to put in some articles here, but I also thought we had a lot of stuff to talk about. But now that you mention it, I can see that what happened to Adam Schiff in the sense when he said that you can't trust the election, right? He was being more emotional than he would ever have been before, right? And I think it lifted some eyebrows from the people who know him, because he's this policy nerd, and from other times I've seen him with other things, he's brilliant. He is a brilliant mind, like.
Yes, and he's evil and a douchebag.
But
I mean, he sits on he chairs the House Intelligence Committee, right? His job is the oversight of intelligence officials, and the only thing he does is just parrot what they say. I mean,
No, so the douchebag thing you got from No Agenda, right?
Yeah, they call him that. I think it's very appropriate. I mean, they've been calling him that since. Okay, so I can tell you exactly the moment. I had never heard of Adam Schiff, right? So I'm preparing this. I was this was before the Private Citizen. I was doing a podcast on the thing we called the Trump memo, right? And so Schiff is there, and his job is to read out the memo that Trump had published, the White House had published. And instead of reading the fucking memo, he was acting. He was acting it. He made up shit. He made a voice like The Godfather, where he pretended Trump was like, I gotta, what's he say again? I got something here you can't refuse.
Do me a favor.
Yeah. And I'm like, what the fuck, man? It's published. The fucking memo is published. Your fucking job is you're an elected representative of the people, is to lay down the facts right now. He didn't do that. That's ever since then I thought he was
okay, but then again, the American president has said a lot of things in the last 4 years that equals that or worse Would you not agree?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So.
But everybody knows Trump's a douchebag. Yeah, of course Trump's a douchebag.
Okay, then I'm happy. If you call both of them douchebags, then I'm happy.
I totally. I mean, sorry, I had literally assumed that was a given. I mean, I think I've called Trump worse. I mean, he's a real estate developer from New York. I mean, he's as sketchy as you can get.
In the rule book, it's right next to mafia, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I do take your point on it. If I was Schiff, I would probably regret stepping out of character like that, because in other things that he has done, I respect a lot what work he's done in an environment where, like, everything and the kitchen sink got thrown at Schiff to make sure that damage limitation was done about all of the things that Trump and his organization has gotten up to, and there's far too much for us to come into this. But as I talked about in the last one as well, that Trump himself stood up and said, I have nothing to do with Russia, no deals, no nothing, no business. I've handed everything over to my sons. I have nothing to do with anything. He was really like, and that's what he does. Like, he just, when there's something that could potentially be a problem with either a person or something, he just completely disavows anything, and very explicitly goes like, I don't know who this person is. I don't know them. And he might have been a friend with them for 20 years and they're extremely close to his business dealings or whatever, but all of a sudden he doesn't know him, right, or know the person. So that's just the way he deals with that. He started getting into the Russian real estate market and Russian businesses in the late 80s, Trump, and it's always been his wet dream to have like a Trump Tower and a Trump Hotel and so on in Moscow and other places. And this is what the whole impeachment side was on, which was how much was he giving away for these letters of interest or those sort of letters of intent, and the blessing of the Kremlin elite to build things in Moscow and then obviously make a lot of money out of that. How did that come about? And then there was another strand, which was that obviously before he even became president-elect, he had a group of people that were sort of covertly discussing foreign policy.
Don't bring up that point. No, that was not before he was president-elect. That was
yes,
when
it was.
He was president-elect.
No, my friends. It was way back early in 2006.
I mean, no, the stuff the FBI investigated Flynn.
No. They investigated a lot of people. Flynn.
Yeah, but they investigated. Yeah. For absolutely no reason. Like, no reason.
No. You need to do your research on this.
Yeah,
you have not researched this enough.
Okay, so what beside the Logan Act was the reason why a actual criminal? What Flynn did that was criminal that was not the Logan Act?
Right. So Flynn was actually an agent of Turkey at the time. An agent doesn't mean that he was a spy or whatever, but he was a registered agent working for the Turkish government. So he was unofficially part of this foreign policy national security group. He was never named to be part of that when Trump had his work group, but he did actually work with them. And then he later lied about how he was involved with that. So he lied to the FBI. And I know you'll now come charging out the blocks and saying like, he was set up. It was a setup.
No. It's not. Yeah. I don't.
He got indicted and
yes, he lied to the FBI.
Yeah,
something
he lied to the FBI about his involvement because
something that every lawyer tells you shouldn't be illegal.
Well, I don't care. It was illegal, Fab. I mean, this is what you say. If this is the law, and he obviously wanted to hide it, right?
Yeah, but the point is not that he lied against the FBI. The point is that the whole investigation, they investigated him illegally. They didn't. The FBI needs.
No, they did not investigate him illegally.
They admitted their own investigators wanted to close the investigation because they had nothing on him, and the FBI has admitted that they just kept investigating him because he violated the Logan Act. That's the thing they used to justify to continue the investigation. And the Logan Act is something nobody has ever been indicted for in the history of the US. The Logan Act is a joke. It's probably unconstitutional.
I know most legal scholars say that it's a joke and it's never really been applied. So I don't care so much about the Logan Act either. I care more about that they were actively trying to hide the kind of conversations and work that they were doing, and then that got them to lie to the authorities when they were questioned on the oath. And I'm sorry, then you have broken the law.
You're right. You're completely right. You have broken the law. But if the investigation, if you had people's phones tapped, right, on legally spurious reasons, and that doesn't matter, that gets thrown out in court.
This was a guy who was known to be working with Russians and other regimes outside of the U.S. for years. This guy.
So what? But if you're in a transition team and that's your job.
He's a person of interest to the American
authorities. You can't just tap somebody's phone.
Because if you go to a judge and say we have reasonable a FISA warrant, yes, you can. Yeah. Well, if you can build up.
Yes, I know you can, but you shouldn't be able to, especially not the FISA court.
It's the law, Fab. You've just said that if you are able to do these things, and that's the law, and
that is the law, and the law is also if you then have a court case. And the judge it is determined that what you used as evidence and the reasons you investigated someone are not sufficient cause. So if you get a warrant from a judge to tap somebody's phone, then you find information. There's a legal case about that, and then you can argue that the reason to tap that person's phone wasn't sufficient, unconstitutional or whatever, then the evidence gets thrown out. The fact that you lied to
they had a case for it. At the time, they had a case for
under the Logan Act.
You can't say that they were doing it illegally, but okay, maybe the judge then threw out the evidence, but he still lied, so that's why he got indicted, right? So you have to be careful here, right? I can see you're really wanting to make sure that we can say it was all bogus.
No, that's not my point.
It wasn't just Flynn. He was together with a group.
We are talking, Mike. This is not my point. You're misunderstanding me. I don't care about Flynn. I don't care about Trump. I care about privacy and civil liberties. And it doesn't matter if somebody is accused of something, if they're guilty. You have to assume everybody has the same rights. Doesn't matter what sleazeball they are. And this investigation was highly spurious. You wouldn't have, as a person, you wouldn't want the FBI to investigate you like this. And then, of course, if they get you in a room and they put you under oath and they know more about you than you probably know about yourself, of course they're going to get you to lie. Right? Yeah, this is why every lawyer tells you never talk to the police and never talk to the FBI, especially.
Yeah, because but I'm sorry, but I can't really. Yes, if this guy just wanted to.
You can't ignore the rule of law and how it usually works just because you don't like the person that gets indicted in that case.
No, but what is it that I've said that goes against that principle?
You said he's it's the law. You're not allowed to lie to the FBI. He lied to the FBI. He got indicted and everything's fine. It's not fine. The investigation was extremely hair-raisingly bad.
Why?
Because they did not have enough evidence to investigate these people, let alone tap their phones. You need a good reason for that.
To do it, as defined by the FISA definitions, but then you're
going that the FISA court is something that is awesome and should exist in a under the rule of law.
I'm not saying it's great, but they were able to do that. There was
of course they were able to do
problem.
that. They're the FBI. They're an intelligence service. They can do all kinds of shit. That doesn't matter that the public shouldn't call out when all this shit comes to light. You should call out that these are police state, security state measures that shouldn't be used, especially not on a politician who's connected like to whatever the incoming president of an opposite political party.
Okay, let's say that Germany is currently doing a lot of sanctions on Poland because Poland has been trying to subvert Germany's democracy and install people who are more sort of Polish leaning, and they want to have all of Germany to be a Catholic state again with good social conservative
I like this
policies,
theory. Yes,
right?
I like the setup. Okay.
So and then you have your elections coming up, and you have an up and coming candidate for chancellor that may or may not
be friendly,
be selected as chancellor, but they're in the race, and it looks like they could at least compete against Moody, right?
Yep.
And then it all of a sudden comes to light that the new candidates group of specialists and so on have been negotiating for months and months with powerful political and government forces in Poland to overthrow the sanctions at the moment that Germany is imposing. So the candidate has already pledged to remove them as soon as he or she might win the election and want to overthrow what the current German government is doing.
Got it.
So in that case, your Bundessecurity or whatever they're called,
the internal.
Yeah. Well, what would you want them to have done in such a situation?
So under German law, presuming, which I guess would be the case, that the upcoming, the chancellor the guy who might become chancellor is a member of parliament, they could not legally investigate him for this kind of stuff.
Yeah, okay, because so you already have safeguards there.
Politically, yeah, and I think the US should have these safeguards as well. Also, I don't find this. I mean, let's put some more cherries on the cake here. So, the candidate organization obviously is fundraising in Germany because they need money to run their campaign, but the German/US law says that you're not allowed to be funded by money from outside Germany of any other actors outside of the country. It has to be internal funding by donors and sponsors from Germany. But then it's also realized that through some Catholic organizations and Polish-German friendship organizations in Germany have received a lot of money from Polish donors and oligarchs in Poland that has then been channeled to the candidate's bank account for use in campaign. Right. Yeah. Okay. So they're actively manipulating the political system to get this guy elected
and boosting their candidate, who will then release the.
I get the point.
Sanctions.
Okay. Before that, I would have said I don't see a particular problem. Now I see the problem. That is actively circumventing democracy. And that's a huge problem. Yeah, that should be investigated, but I don't think. See, my point is, I think, especially in this scenario, investigating the people, right, and trying to prove that they're colluding, is going to be extremely hard.
Well, in this case, actually, it was proven that there was funding, and that's why people like Paul Manafort,
so you
Carter Page,
you go
all of those guys. That's why they got in jail, because they actually did this kind of stuff.
You go after the money, right? You go after the money. But if you tell me that a sitting member of like parliament or whatever house you have, is their phones are tapped by the internal intelligence service of the country, all my alarm bells go off. Like, that should never happen.
And this is why you then have the judicial or the intelligence committees in the House, right?
Right, and they need to. But I understand where the problem is. I mean, when I say Schiff should be doing that, I understand why he's not doing that. Our people who sit in these committees don't do that either. They get too friendly with the intelligence community, to use that evil term, and they tell them why it's important what they do, and I understand all of that, but like, I just don't. That this is exactly the problem. I do think this should be investigated, but this is a means of, like, I'm on the side where I think, yes, you should follow the money, you should research that. This should probably this should come out in the press. That's a much better mechanism. That's how you get that, chancellor. Then, let's say he gets elected, and then you can prove that was manipulated, and that you will have to create political pressure and find enough hard evidence to get that guy to step down.
And that is why you would expect something like an impeachment with people with a proper moral compass, that if that's actually proven, and these things did happen the way I explained it in analogous faction in the US, but because an impeachment process is now based on, are you Republican or are you Democrat? You don't care what the content is. You're not going to get rid of the person, are you?
I disagree on that. I did not see enough evidence for that. Not for an impeachment. But also this is beside the point. That's not the point. That is exactly that's exactly the mistake the Democrats made. That's why the impeachment never went through. And
because they just wanted to do it, I think, to bring things to light. I don't think they ever thought that they were actually going to impeach him.
But they didn't.
But you also have to remember that this is when he steps down, Trump. There are things from the Mueller investigation that will come back to haunt him, because some of the stuff Mueller was very, very explicitly saying that he wasn't saying. So, in the report it says, if the president could be exonerated, we would have said it. That's the way he formulated it, right? So the way Mueller finished his report was that he was so touchy-feely he didn't want to say the president must be indicted, because he was like, it's the job of Congress to do this, because the president is above
that's
normal criminal law. No, I know that's my opinion, but that's what it says in the report, that Mueller was like, I will not say what you should do here. There's my report.
Yeah, but
you have your Congress where the president, you're the only means of judging this president. So I'm not going to do it.
But you're assuming that's the reason. So my view on that, the reason is what he was doing, he was acting like an investigator in a legal case, in a case where if you are the prosecution and you want somebody to be convicted of something, you have to prove that they did something wrong, right? And the defense has to prove that he didn't do that, right? The defense doesn't have to prove that he never did anything wrong, right? It's not like, if somebody's indicted for murder and they can't prove sufficiently that he's a murderer, they can't go, well, but he's a criminal and he embezzled money and we can prove that. Right, then that's the case you're gonna have. I don't know. I just see that different, but we will see that. But I think we've proven sufficiently here that your hopes, as much as I share them, of we maybe getting together as a society and as a community and having laws that actually do something instead of this partisan bickering, will sadly never come through.
Yeah, but I think the elephant in the room for me here is that it's been proven that, I guess both with Clinton and then with Trump, that the impeachment process is impossible, right? Because unless there is something so monstrously clear, like if Clinton had been there, a group of photographers burst into his room. He was having sex with Lewinsky, and I don't know, doing. Okay, then like hands up, your pants down, you're done, right? That didn't happen, right? They dragged him, and he still wasn't removed, right? He was impeached but not removed. Same thing with Trump. There are tomes about how like this man has done everything he can to enrich himself through the status of his office, and either with the Russians or the Saudis or you name it. Like there's no end to how much his nose has been in trough, and he set up his family to also continue that with Ivanka's businesses and blah blah. And yes, the Democratic Party has probably lots of corrupt politicians as well, and that stink was around the Clintons and is around the Bidens and so on. So it's the thing is for the voters, the American people, to actually start kicking people up the ranks that are a little bit more, let's say, less part of the system, because I can see why drain the swamp, that sort of MAGA yell, that why it spoke to people, right? Because they do see this. They do see on both sides that it's
okay, but let me get in there.
It's a bit stinky, right?
Yeah, but you raised two different issues there. First of all, the impeachment thing. I don't think the process is the problem. The impeachment process is not the problem. The problem is that the American system is a two-party system.
Yeah. So you. I mean,
we have a very different.
The process is good, but the people who carry it out do not.
We have a very similar system to get rid of a chancellor in Germany, where the members of the parliament say we don't trust this chancellor anymore, and then there's voting in the Bundestag, and then you have a ruling coalition. And they would obviously vote for the chancellor, and then he would never get removed. But because we have more parties, and there's more flex in the system, and some people would actually defect, and this has happened before. That's why they can actually get rid of a chancellor, because we just have more parties. So I think the process is not the problem. It's like the system itself. Is a problem.
Or the people interpreting it, because obviously the intent of the process is not being followed. That.
But no, I wouldn't go that far.
Impeachment is that the Congress they're the peers of the president, right? Okay, the president is the commander-in-chief and head of the executive, but in theory, right, Congress should be full of people who have their own agendas and opinions, and then they look at they are the jurors, right? They, the Senate, they look at the facts and would cast their, judgment based on that. Yeah. But that has been surpassed by party loyalty, right?
But the party loyalty was there from the beginning. I mean, that hasn't changed. It's just in the beginning, the party system in the US wasn't that monolithic. That's the problem. But you can't. I mean, I wouldn't just go. So my reaction to that is not don't change the process, change your party system.
Change the people. Yeah.
But like that speaks to the second thing you've said. So get other people in there, and the problem is that they won't, because the American, the way you become a politician, I mean, it's the same in every country, but in the US, it's very much, I mean, you need money, right? You need to be rich and influential to become a politician. And you have no chance to be even become a candidate for president until you have millions and millions and millions of dollars.
And
I mean, it's the same. Trump poured probably millions of his personal fortunes.
No, he didn't. No, see, that's the thing. That's the thing about the money, right? That he promised that he would use his own funds, but he ended up using the Republican Party funds.
Well,
who was given and that was boosted by, for example, the NRA.
Well, we have a different opinion
on that.
The NRA
had received money from Russians.
We have a different opinion on that. I think and there's stuff that probably comes out, with Deutsche Bank and loans he got, and I personally think he poured a lot of personal money in that, as did Obama, as did Clinton.
He did.
I mean,
Trump did not put a lot of money into his campaign in 2016.
We have to disagree on that. That's not what I've seen, and I don't think you can. My point is, I don't think you can become a candidate for president in the U.S. without doing that. But I think with Trump, it was just less actual money as moving. I don't know, creative money theory. Moving credits.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's rich and he had cash. I'm saying he got credit. He got credit for things. And then he moved that around. And
No, but then I think we're on the same page. Exactly that. I don't think he just put his hand in his pocket and.
What I'm trying to say is, it's probably not so much that you need to be rich. You need to be influential.
Yeah.
You need to have rich friends. Otherwise, you're not
infrastructure behind you. Yeah.
You're not getting into the system at all. And it's generally the same in Congress and the Senate. I don't think it's completely the same. And it depends very much on which state you're in. And but for example, California. Right, you're not becoming a member of the House from California if you're not completely tied into a milieu, a group of people that's been involved in getting people into that position for the last 40 years, probably. Right, there's a reason there's so many Kennedys. In the history of the last 50 years.
The royal clans,
and the Clintons now. I mean, it's that is a large part of the problem, and I actually I don't know how to solve that. I mean, I don't think Trump per se is as you said. I mean, yes, he's a big offender, but to me he's a symptom of this system, right? There's corruption there everywhere, and what we need is the media to investigate this shit.
Yes.
On all sides.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that's the point. I mean, why are we talking about this on the privacy podcast? Because these kind of politics, they influence everything. Right? I mean, we have this law in Germany now they literally just decided that they can come into my flat. Right, which if
you're having a party
for pandemic reasons, but if I understand the legal implications of this, that also means they can send me a Trojan at any time if they think I have a party, and they don't need a judge to sign off on that, right? So, and we have this because we have the same kind of shitty media and corruption in politics that we have, and non-accountability of politicians that you can see in the US, right? I think our health minister should be held accountable for the things he hasn't done in the last 4 months. And no, he's not held accountable. He's still there because he's in a group of people around Mutti, and as long as Mutti likes him, he's going to be in there, and it's all going to shit, Mike. It's all going to shit. What are we going to do?
That's why we're here, Fab. We're here to.
We're going to fix it with 3.5 hours of podcast discussions. This could actually be longer than the other one.
Yeah, I will probably have to go soon.
No, I think we've talked about pretty much. I think we should start wrapping it up. I think we should keep on this. Maybe not the US beat so much, but I wanna. So my thing is, I want to take this. So we talked about manipulating the most certainly gonna be an even longer episode. We're gonna talk about. I think we should look at. I mean, sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. We talked about how manipulating the election, how that might work, and all these. systems that are in place, social media and the media and nudging and all of that. And I think we just have to keep an eye on that independent of elections, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, but I'd actually say we have a perfect opportunity to have a little nod to this in January when these senatorial
you want to reconvene
elections.
Then? Well, yeah. Okay.
Well, just if you want to talk about how it's going with journalism and what's the media landscape now that Biden has
definitely.
In, for example,
has it changed? Right.
Something like that. So maybe not like a full 3.5 hours about the US, but if you want to then riff on to other stuff, then yeah, definitely, I'm up for it.
Well, I think the problem we just have here now is just that we have these politicians who make policy or laws or whatever, but they just do it, and then the media is not reporting on that, and or reporting on it slantedly, right? So today there were again huge demonstrations in front of the Bundestag because people were upset against a law like this and the civil liberties being taken away. But then they're like slanted as, okay, these are all neo-Nazis, and and they were not wearing masks, and they're all crazy. So I think we have to keep an eye on that, how that impacts all kinds of issues.
Yeah, I think that would be great because there is a general acceptance in the population now linked to the pandemic. I think about or just not a reflection maybe about what it actually means for your personal privacy and liberty. And now with the vaccine coming in, will we see rollbacks soon, or what's going to happen? It's you really have to keep your eye on it for sure.
Yeah, especially because I don't know how it's in Ireland, but we just passed this law. This law is going to be on the book, right?
Yeah. So, and then as you said in one of your other episodes, once a law is in the book, which politician is going to remove it again?
And you can trigger it. You can trigger it with just saying there's a pandemic. Well, just saying, but you could. Yeah. So I think this is very important. So let's reconvene in January. Maybe another thing we didn't get through that I also want to talk about is so I think all these measures, they to me feel like this is more about control, right? And politicians actually rejoice and they like having control over people.
Which makes their lives easier. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's something that Trump as applies to Trump as well as to Biden. So I think we have to keep that in view as well. Okay, so let's reconvene in January. We have a deal. I like this.
Sure thing, buddy.
Okay, I'll let you go and keep an eye on the feedback that will be coming in.
Yeah, super.
Okay.
Looking forward to it.
Thanks
so much, Fab. It's been great. Great discussion there. Enjoyed it so much.
Me very much as well.
Very good.
I like when you're
I have to pick up
me.
My son. He's standing in the rain somewhere, freezing. So
okay, yeah. I'll let you go. I'll record the rest of this podcast and then I'll write some news stories I have to write. Yes. So please pick him up. I didn't want to keep you.
No worries. Thanks so much. Talk to you soon. Take care.
So, well, that was a long recording. I should probably stop recording now. My God, wonder my hard drive didn't fill up. Yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for keeping us company through this huge discussion. I will now have a quick break and then I'll start making a podcast out of this, and that should be out later in the evening. I'm not gonna stream that because I might have to do some things in the middle and be a bit agile. I now have to first look up what happened if the Bundestag and the Bundesrat passed this law, and yeah. Again, I will try to do an episode on the crypto wars. I'm still planning to do that as soon as possible. Maybe this week, although I have a lot of work to do right now, so I don't know, but I'll give my best. It's still very much on the agenda, something we need to definitely cover very soon, because it's very dangerous, I feel. Yeah. Thanks for watching, and if you listen to all of that, you definitely get a stamina prize. Once again, okay. See you all. I'll be back streaming something at some point. I don't know when yet. Keep an eye on fab.industries / can't talk anymore /stream. Wait. Need to drink a little bit. Okay. That's better. Okay. Thanks for watching. See you, everybody.